Comdex belongs to IBM. Christmas sales outlook is dismal. And games get protected in Japan. These stories and many, many more on this episode of the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine.
I've been waiting a long time for a chance to say this. Stop the presses.
Requiescat in pace.
Makes him crazy, man. What is a man?
It's me, Mario.
What a mess.
Get over here!
Please save me.
Welcome back to the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine, the show where we travel back in time to find out what was making headlines in the home computer and video game industries of yesteryear. I'm your host, Carl, and welcome back, everybody's favorite co-host, Alex.
Happy to be here, Carl. Didn't know this still existed, if I'm being honest.
You mean after 7 months of not recording, you thought that the show might be over? No, say it's not so.
No, but truly happy to be back, Carl. Always a pleasure to go through this video game history with you. So.
Yeah. And I apologize to everybody out there. I guess the stresses of having a second child at home, plus watching the entire world be set ablaze, kind of took their mental toll on me, and I needed a break. But we are back, and I have so many interviews on my hard drive that is just gathering dust. Those also need to go out, and you know what? It just was a nice thing to turn on the time machine, head back 42 years at this point to November of 1984 and forget that I don't live there anymore. So,
yeah, 1984, that was a great time too, Carl. I believe it was morning in America.
No, wasn't that ad campaign? No, you're right. That would have been was that the election of 84 or the election of 80?
No, that was 84.
Oh, the 84. Oh my goodness.
Because he was touting his successes, in the first go.
You're right. Oh my goodness. Oh, how time flies. So, with that being said, everybody remember, if you have any feedback for us or anything else, you can find all the links on how to contact us in the show notes, or you can also support us on Patreon, and all the links for that are in the show notes as well. And of course, the caveat always when we're going back in time and checking out these old news stories, we are using publications dated November of 1984. So some of the news will have happened earlier than that. It's a framing device. Please don't send me emails about that. So I think I've covered all the necessary topics. So with no further ado, let us turn to our first order of business, the 7 minutes in heaven.
Now, wait a minute, Carl. I know it's been a while, but we're supposed to have a little obligatory banter here, and we got 7 months of banter built up, it feels like. So,
you're right. And I do believe that our listeners love the banter. And if they don't, well, just hit the fast forward button. So, tell me, sir, what has been going on in your world?
Well, you can read all about it in the newspapers, Carl, because I work for a little company called Block Incorporated that I think has been in there recently. And yes, I still do work for them, which 40% of the company can't say anymore. And
you convinced somebody that you were actually an AI, right?
No comment, Carl. No comment. Yeah, it's been a crazy time in the world. Been a crazy time everywhere, obviously. But keeping on. Of course, my podcast has still been going all this time. I do not begrudge you your break at all. That is what sane people do. Jeffrey and I are insane people, so we still have not taken a break in 10 and a half years.
All I'm going to say is neither one of you has a 1-year-old at home.
Exactly. I said I was throwing no shade on you. That wasn't a dig. That wasn't a dig. I'm just saying we're still chugging along out there. Just did a couple of episodes on the Elder Scrolls series, specifically through Morrowind, and just dropped our Cinemaware episode for all you Amiga folks out there.
Oh, I saw that. I was like, oh my goodness, he better get it all right. He better get it all right. And if he does not say that Wings is one of the greatest pieces of software ever created, there will be hell to pay.
Well, this may be my last episode as everybody's favorite co-host on the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine. Don't worry, I was not unkind to it. I think we can reach a happy middle there. But
yeah.
And just appeared on the Video Game History Hour of the Video Game History Foundation.
Oh, really?
Well, dropping some truth bombs about Sega of America and Sega Enterprises in the mid-90s. All you Woods Breton fans out there better watch out, because we get into currency.
Okay. I definitely have to check this out then, because it's on my podcast feed, but I haven't checked it in a while. I just finished. I've got a bunch of interviews on the hard drive. Gary Bracey, the first part of that one just went up before this episode, and I've got at least probably 2 more episodes with him, just because we went deep into the mechanics of Ocean software in the early days. And it was a lot of fun talking to him about it. But I also just concluded an interview with a buddy of mine that I've been talking to for years, and we've been talking about doing this interview for at least since before the pandemic. Jesus.
Wow.
And we finally did it. Juan Jose Muglia, also known as Juanete, of Megasoft. That's a pretty well-known name in the cracking community. And he was one of the original guys bringing software into Argentina back in the 80s, when in the piracy days, and started his own shop. And the shop is still going today as a legitimate company. And we go into the transition from the piracy world to the legitimate software world and how that changed in the 90s and so forth. Fascinating conversation. Unfortunately, all in Spanish. It'll probably be my first test of machine translation for that stuff. So
absolutely.
And tomorrow morning, I'm interviewing Mary Lou Badu. Badu. Can't remember how to pronounce her last name, but the co-author of the Video Game Update and Computer Entertainer newsletters.
Yes, very good.
Yeah, I'm interviewing her tomorrow morning. I am so looking forward to this one. Oh my goodness!
Man. Yeah, and another shout out to the Video Game History Foundation there for getting all of the rights to all of those and getting fresh scans up on the internet. Check those out if you haven't. That is a phenomenal. They were the only ones doing it from, really 1984-ish to 1986-ish. They were about the only ones still standing, covering everything. It's pretty cool.
Well, not only that, but it's also the business model behind it and everything else. Plus the fact that she was actually in the music side of Warner Brothers at the time Atari is purchased. And that's really the thing I want to talk to her about. She was like the producer or the manager or representative of Prince and stuff at Warner at the time. She's actually working on a book about Prince. And,
fantastic.
And what I really want to get is, what was the perspective of the other divisions of Warner Brothers to the rise of Atari in the company? That's sure. The conversation I want to have with her. So it'll be fascinating. But
looking forward to it. You always do a great interview.
Oh, thank you very much.
Seriously, if you're only listening to these, to the two of us prattle on for 4 hours and not listening to the interviews, you're missing the best part of the podcast. No offense, but I'm taking myself down here too.
Now, I can tell you right now, knowing what the viewership statistics are, it's a much smaller group of people listening to the timeline jumps and a lot greater the percentage of the interviews listeners are listening to the interviews.
That's how it should be.
The Phil Adam one I did is getting a lot of heat. I did not know that trolls would come out of the woodwork on that one the way they did. But hey, that was the Amico thing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you get anywhere near the Amico, and that's gonna happen, which is a shame. Phil Adam is a very nice and earnest guy. I interviewed him years before Amico was even a twinkle in Tommy Tallarico's eye. So, my interview is free of all of that. But
yeah, well, and this is also why I left all 4.5 hours of it in one chunk, because I was like, okay, you Amico people who are just going to make noise no matter what happens. I'm not defending the Amico, not doing that. I'm saying if you are going to make noise about that, I'm at least going to make you sit through the rest of his freaking career. Okay.
that's right. Plus, they can get it out of their system all at once.
Exactly. I was not going to divide it up into 2 parts. So there'd one episode that would just be the lightning rod episode.
Right.
So, oh, well.
All right. Well, that's probably enough obligatory banter. But in our defense, we had 7 months to catch up on. So,
yeah, I mean, there's been a lot. Oh, I also, one thing I do have to say, and for those who have been following along, my daughter's bread box computer, the C64 bread box, I finally have achieved everything I wanted to achieve with it. I've been going through old archives because it's an Android tablet in there. I found old Android software that'll work on it. So basically it has its own little version of Photoshop. It's got its own Office package. It is a fully functional computer that still somehow manages to boot software faster than my PC. So take that as you will, but I that was like a personal achievement of mine. I've managed to make it all work.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I can now die happy. No, okay. No, I can't because we haven't gone back to November of 1984 yet.
Now you have to make the bread box Amiga, Carl.
Oh,
you can't die before doing that. Gotta bring it forward.
I did install an Amiga emulator on there. So I do have a fully functional Amiga emulator on there. I've got the C64. I got all the 8 and 16-bit systems. PlayStation doesn't quite hit full refresh rate, but oh well, minor technicality. Okay, now let's get to business. The 7 minutes in heaven, as longtime listeners know, this is the sacred ritual by which we baptize the time machine in the blood, sweat, and tears of the co-host as he and or maybe at some point a she needs to play a game that was reviewed in a publication dated of the year of the jump, in this case, November of 1984, that they have not played previously for an entire 7 minutes.
I'm just going to say, I'm not sure that's quite how the Geneva Conventions describes it.
Oh, come on. We all know that those don't apply anymore, right? I don't even want to think about it. Now, so we had some true classics this time. We had Ghostbusters on the Commodore 64. We had Antarctic on the MSX. We had Spy versus Spy, Breakdance. Not quite as well known, but still for the time. Avalon on the Spectrum, Karate Champ in the arcades, Elite for the BBC Micro. But there was only one game that truly could represent this era, represent the unbound height of gameplay mechanics, and that was Dai's Baby. If you don't know what that is, there's a link in the show notes. No, we're not doing Dai's Baby. Have you seen Dai's Baby?
I have not.
Oh my Lord. That is an experience that it's what YouTube was made for, because nobody should have to suffer through the actual play. It's a video game parodying the birth of Princess Diana's baby. And it's just as bad as you think it is. So Yeah, it's absolutely terrible, thrown together by this guy. I actually tracked down the developer,
Oh my.
and I was this close to asking him for an interview. I was like, this might just be fun. And then I decided, I've got other things in my life. He didn't stick with game development beyond this game, but he is working on a very cool project where he's creating a VR recreation of the world's very first World's Exhibition, which was in London in 18 something.
Very
And
nice.
yeah, no, it's a very cool little ambitious thing that he's got there. But okay, Dies Baby was not that great thing. So what did we choose? Which game did you decide to embark on, Alex?
Well, Carl, it's become kind of a tradition at this point. We did Attic Attack. We did Saberwolf. So really, there was only one game that we could do to continue this 7 minutes in heaven tour, and that's Nightlore.
Exactly. The game that probably more than any other cements ultimate play the game in the annals of Spectrum history. So, are you ready to go isometric?
Let's do it.
Welcome back, Alex, from your 7 minutes in heaven. So, for the uninitiated, how would you describe Nightlore based on your 7 minutes with the game?
Walk poorly, push objects frustratingly, jump trickily, vaguely gather items.
Okay, I think we need some more detail here. So, what kind of game is it?
It's a platform game with light puzzle elements portrayed from an isometric perspective. And of course I knew this even before I played the game. It was incredibly groundbreaking in the way that it presented these elements in a Spectrum game. Graphically, nobody thought this kind of thing was possible. It does look great for a Spectrum game, for a game of that time. The animation is fairly smooth as well, which kudos to them for that. But the controls are terrible. And, I got to say, I'm sorry, all you Ultimate/Rare fans out there. It is just not my cup of tea. I totally understood why it blew you away in 1984 if you were playing it in 1984. I mean, I get it. I get it where it is on that line. But, I grew up on the NES. And, the controls were just a wee bit better on that system. I'm not even talking about graphics because who cares? But the controls were so much better on that system. The physics were so much better on that system. And that's the problem, not the graphics. I'm not poo-pooing an old game because, it's primitive in some ways. It's just, not that fun, Carl, in my 7 minutes of playing.
I can understand. I mean, it's got tank controls, basically, or similar. And now, the environment that you're moving through is quite interactive for the time.
Oh, sure. And, they're smart about it. They divide it into individual rooms, and they keep the amount of objects in any individual room fairly low, which is what allows everything to kind of animate very well and look very good and be interactive. And, it's definitely impressive that, different objects have kind of different amounts of movement or friction as you push them around. Obviously I only encountered a small number of rooms in my time playing, but there was one room where you had to push a low friction object that would scoot too far if you just pushed it alone. So you had to push another object around to the other side to serve as a backstop. And I mean, those are some pretty sophisticated block puzzles for a 1984 computer game. I mean, no doubt about it. I understand why if you grew up on a Spectrum and then you saw this, you're like, oh my gosh. I get that. Certainly.
Very cool. And Now, this game was originally only released on Z80 systems, as far as I knew. And as I'm saying that, I just noticed that there was a BBC Micro version, which means that it did get ported to 6502 systems. And I'm quite surprised by that. But it did not get a C64 port. So this is one of the rare cases of a 7 Minutes in Heaven game that I did not play. And I just found out in Japan it got a Famicom Disk System port.
Yeah, I guess I knew that. That rings a bell now that you say it.
Yeah. But apparently just from the screenshots, it doesn't seem to have a lot of the elevation play. Like the floor is much bigger per room, but at the same time, it doesn't have a lot of the same puzzle mechanics.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not quite the same game, but it's interesting that they did port it. So it's probably one of those very early, late 1986 game. So I can see why they would have ported it, and it would have been around the same time that the Rare guys were starting to look at the NES.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, okay, makes sense. Now, given your wonderful experience with the game, and remember, everybody, you can always watch the video version of this up on YouTube. Link is in the show notes. Would you recommend that somebody play it today?
I mean, honestly, probably not, Carl, but I mean, your mileage may vary. It's impressive for the system it's on. So if you want to see what the Spectrum has to offer, it's probably not the worst thing you could play on the Spectrum. I would still say just go play Manic Miner, which I actually did legitimately enjoy. So you see, I'm not just against everything British or everything Spectrum, because I did enjoy Manic Miner. But, I don't think I really can. I think it's a game that rightfully impressed at the time, but it's only in comparison to everything else that was coming out around it, not in comparison to the pinnacle of what a game can be. And there are just better games to spend your time with today. I mean, even in the same genre as it is,
Totally legit. Okay, well, in that case then, we welcome your hate mail, all of you from England.
Right.
And let's check in with our good friend Ethan to find out what we got wrong in our last couple of jumps.
And remember, when you are sending in that mail, that this was the Retronauts podcast. Retronauts. Thank you.
Exactly.
Hello, this is a prepaid collect call from
the Department of Corrections.
This call is subject to recording and monitoring. To accept charges, press 1. You may start the conversation now.
Welcome back, Ethan. So, it's been a while.
Carl, we're at the gates. We are here to overthrow the dictatorial government of the 1984.
Okay.
We started the revolution in the last episode. I know it's been a long time since the revolution has been going on, but that is the storyline, and we're sticking to it.
Wow, hats off to continuity, my friend. Hats off to continuity.
But I thought the revolution would not be podcasted.
Alex, you are too far in the past for this. But before we go in and finally find out who Big Brother is, we have some Department of Corrections to go through.
It's an AI, isn't it? Okay,
it could never be so predictable. Come on.
I'm getting it mixed up with V for Vendetta. Sorry. Okay.
Well,
yeah.
Well, would
book,
you kindly give
movie.
us our corrections then?
Oh, there's one for you. Not that I like BioShock. But anyways, October 1984. Let's get into it. Alex, First one's for you. You were making a remark about teenage spending back in the day and how companies didn't seem to understand it. And you said, well, there was this brief fad with Elvis and then nobody understood it until the 80s, which I highly dispute. One, because there was definitely something in between that is called the Beatles, where they absolutely understood what that was. But I think it has way more to do with the ebbs and flows of capitalism at large, where things are more or less capitalized in different eras. I don't think it was just a straight they just forgot that teenagers spend money.
No, I mean, and I forget what I said at the time, honestly, because it's been way too long. But I mean, clearly music has always been targeted at teens and was targeted at teens in the 60s, and there were movies targeted at teens too. So I forget the exact context of what I said, but I mean, you're probably right that I was overly broad, but definitely it feels like there was a moment in the 80s where they came back to it. Maybe it was lost a little bit in the 70s. I don't know. It feels like there was a moment where they suddenly came back to teenagers again, but I'm sure I said something too broad because that makes sense.
Yes. But we will not linger on these things, for before we go to 1984, we must go back to 1944.
Oh,
because God. You do the long leap backs and such, which there is no sound effect for, but there will be sound effects for the upcoming Switch when we get there, because, you know, we are narrowing in on it now. So, 1944, you made a broad comment, Carl, of entertainment during... No, actually, I think it was Alex. Entertainment during the war just kind of stopped, but that's not at all true. Hollywood was still going. Coinop was still going. It is not the case that nobody was producing entertainment products just because there was, you know, an economic downturn in the later part of the war for the U.S.
I think this was more in the context of what was coming out in Cashbox about the manufacturing of new Coinop
but
devices.
You very broadly said things like Hollywood had stopped during the war, and that's just not true.
Yeah, I don't think we made that broad of a comment. But,
again, I just can't remember. But I mean, obviously Hollywood didn't completely stop, though. You know, things were different there for a couple of years, but I mean, Olivier made Henry V or whatever it was he made, you know.
and Disney made all those little 2-part movies, like, you know, what was it?
Yeah, they did their anthology movies. Yeah.
No, that was mainly because their previous movies had bombed. Even Bambi bombed.
That's true. But
you mean the kids don't respond when you kill a beloved leader figure on screen?
It was off screen.
Okay. Fair enough.
Sort of off screen. I mean,
heavily implied. Anyhow, 1984, let's get to it. You had been wondering if Atari Adventure, their little arcade experiment, had yet been sold, but that they had not at the time. That's post the Namco buyout. They kept running it for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Still with the computer element, or just as a straight arcade at that point?
I couldn't tell you. Those things are not very well documented. Like, there's a whole bunch of, like, I believe one thing that Marty and Kurt had was a whole bunch of material, like, leading up to the concept of it. We have some footage of what it was like inside, but then you just don't get any reporting on it after that. So I couldn't tell you if the other locations had all the computer things and stuff.
Gotcha.
And also related to the Namco buyout, Manny Girard will be back. This is something that when Alex interviewed him, and he is now passed away, I made sure to tell him to ask him about, because there is a photo of Manny Girard shaking hands with Masaya Nakamura that is dated to the Namco deal. So he was not part of Warner at that point. I believe he was some kind of consultant of some kind, but he did in fact like do the issuing of the deal of selling Atari games to Namco, even though he did not remember doing it. There is photo evidence.
Indeed. Manny Gerard will return in the Harmonic story.
True. And also, wasn't he part of Universal as well? I think he had a little investment in that side, too.
I don't know.
I vaguely recall that. Anyhow, speaking of the going across the pond now to the United Kingdom, that Commercial Breaks episode has not aired yet. You cannot use it as evidence of things that like here's the it airs in December, which is what I wanted to do a special episode on when we get there, but need to get the normal episodes out first.
Yeah, no, I know it won't air until December, but since the newspapers were reporting on Imagine's fall, I just used it to fill the gaps. But you are correct; it will not air until December.
Then you were wondering about the price of a Nintendo VS system, because that is how you say it, a VS system.
Yes.
I could not find a price from like right when it came out, but a used VS system in May 1984, so only a couple months after it came out, was $2,400. So it was probably about $3,000, which is a little higher than a typical arcade cabinet, but it's not like a huge.
No, that's not a bad value, considering how they continued to support it for years after.
Yeah.
And one of the games announced last time you looked at the VS system was Punch-Out for the VS system, and you had made a guess of like, when Punch-Out comes out is when they abandon the idea of being in the arcade, but Punch-Out did not come out for at least 2.5 years after this, because what they needed to do is they needed to create technology to make those big characters. That was the thing that R&D 3 did in order to make Punch-Out viable.
So are we talking about the U.S. release or the Japanese release?
They were pretty close together. It was mid 1987.
Does the Japanese release have the Mike Tyson tie-in? No.
It did.
Really?
There was originally it was not going to. Very recently, the Video Game History Foundation found a very early prototype of Punch-Out that did not have Mike Tyson in it. So it appears that they got that license rather late, but it did in Japan have Mike Tyson. The original release of it, they did like a special version of it, didn't have it in there, but later on they put it in Japan as well.
That prototype still had vodka Drunginsky in it as well.
Indeed.
Instead of soda Popinski.
Now to speak on the Donkey Kong lawsuit. Within the interim of this podcast going out, you may have seen that Norm Gaming Historian retired, and one of the things that he gave to people was all the Donkey Kong court documents, which I got to look at, and I will be doing a write-up on it very soon. But on the subject of the King Kong movie rights that precede all of this, I believe there was a comment that the remake of King Kong, Universal wanted to release that. That is not actually what happened. Universal wanted to make their own remake of Donkey Kong, and that's why the whole thing went to court in 1976.
You mean their own remake of King Kong?
King Kong, right, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's very easy.
Don't correct the Department of Corrections. That's not cool, man.
I understand now the power Ethan wields. It is enticing.
Who corrects the correctors?
Interesting. All right. There is also some comment of about Popeye and Betty Boop as characters. I believe they said they were Universal characters, but they were Fleischer characters. Both of them in animated form, obviously,
Yeah.
Fleischer, Popeye existed in its comic book form before that.
But who owned the rights by then? Because Fleischer was long gone by this point.
It's complicated because a lot of Fleischer stuff did go into the public domain because they didn't put the C in front of the things back in the day. So there, but the Fleischers themselves, like Fleischer Pictures, went out of business, but they seem to like taken the rights with them to other places for stuff. So yeah, it's kind of weird.
Gotcha. Well, wait, which syndication has the rights to Popeye? Because the comic book character, comic strip character would still be.
So Fleischer was acquired at one point by Paramount, like the studio was.
King Features had the rights to Popeye.
Yeah.
For a while. Like I believe they bought basically what was the comic strip and all those.
Yeah, they
rights.
basically have the publishing rights.
Though this year the very early issues of Popeye went into the public domain, so you can make Popeye things.
Woohoo!
So
Thimble Theaters
hear me
making
out.
a comeback.
Hear me out. Simple platforming game. An ape at the top of a construction site. Popeye having to save olive oil running up the construction site. I think
never worked.
I think we may have something here.
Oh my. Bad decisions all around here in the Department of Corrections. And finally, to touch on a preservation subject, you were talking about the Doomsday Project or the Domesday Project. Nobody knows how to pronounce it because it's an old English word. But Doomsday is how it would pronounce back in the day. But I believe that the project as it currently exists is called the Domesday Project because it's easier to say. They basically do as perfect a rips off of laser discs that you can get. They've expanded into other things as well. But that's kind of like the core of the modern day Domesday Project. They get like the data off of the laser disc, not a rip through a capture card.
Nice.
Okay, cool.
It is a very big technical challenge, but it is a cool thing that the preservation community has managed to do.
That is cool. So, is that the end for October of 1984?
Yes, Carl, you are about to see Big Brother. Alex, cuff him.
Wait. Before you do this, we need to finally break a tradition here at the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine. Since the first Department of Corrections aired many, many, many moons ago, we had always done it based off of, well, at first when the show had 3 jumps per episode and managed to still just be an hour long. Don't ask me how that happened. We would always then do a Department of Corrections the following episode about all 3 of the jumps. Then when we broke it up into multiple jumps, we started doing the Department of Corrections based off of the previous 10-year jump or the previous 20-year jump. So you would always get correction for the last jump of that many years. And it was basically because I thought some people would just jump over the 90s jumps and only listen to the 80s jumps and so on and so forth. And that would make the whole thing more consistent for them. Since I don't have any kind of data to back up that anybody's doing that, and since we've been taking longer between the jumps because the research has been taking longer, at this moment, I would like to make an executive decision and say that we are going to simply do the Department of Corrections for October of 1994 as well. And from this point forward, we'll always just be doing the corrections for the previous episode so that the length of time between these doesn't get so long that none of us can remember what the hell we said during the Department of Corrections. Does that sound reasonable to you, fine gentlemen?
Well, we don't have a choice, but neither do you. Now that you are being taken before Big Brother.
I was going to say, what happens if I say no? I almost want to find out.
Nothing, because I don't really have any authority. Wow. Yeah. Now that I say it out loud, I realize how many aspects of my life that applies to. Oh, I'm depressed now. This is sad.
Well, you'll be even sadder once we take you to room 101, Carl, for it is the end of November 1984. Tune in for the final 1984 to see how this all concludes.
Well, 2 more, November and December. So,
all right.
Yeah. So let's do the October 1994 Department of Corrections.
Okay, gotta scroll down.
So, Ethan, what did we get wrong in October of 1994?
Oh, well, who knows at this point, Carl, but we are here once again in the Department of Corrections to say all the things that need to be said, and Alex can look in the corner and commentate as we do. Just believe that he's here.
Let's do it.
All right. October 1994, first off, the Alex comment. I'm curious, Alex, since this is something I've noticed on both here and on They Create Worlds. What do you think the actual bounds of the Sillywood era are? What are the years that encapsulate Sillywood?
Oh, I've never actually tried to tie that down to a specific set of years. So, I mean, I haven't given it that kind of thought. Because there are different ways that you can score it. But it's certainly in full swing by 1991 when Sony's getting in. And it keeps going till sometime in the late 90s when some of the companies start to get out of it or pivot into more traditional things. But I don't have an exact range for you.
I asked because in this episode you were talking about they got too late on the Sillywood and it's declining, and that's kind of like why I'm curious what you think the bounds.
Yeah, are. So if you're talking about that kind of thing, I would say 1994 is probably getting in too late. I mean, it's not necessarily true that like there's still some games that are interactive movies like Phantasmagoria that are going to do well in 1995 or whatever, but 94 seems a little late to be getting started because 1995 is probably, this is off the cuff, so I could be wrong, but 1995 is probably the high watermark, and then you're looking at, slow decline after that.
I think that
I would agree.
I feel like the bound is like 1996. After that point, FMV is passé. I think like that's where people really stopped trying to do it.
I think you have to also take development time into account here, because if a product's coming out in 1995 and it's got FMV and everything else in it, you probably started developing the software and the tech and everything in 93. Phantasmagoria took quite a while to get off the ground.
Well, yeah, that's a specific case, but in most cases, like even Wing Commander 3 only took like 9 months to do.
Okay. Yeah. But really only 9 months?
That's what I've seen.
Interesting.
This is a time period where you can get games done faster. It's just
That's true. That is true. That is true. That is true.
It's the 3D that's the dividing line. That's when it actually gets hard.
That's true.
Filming people in front of a set ain't that hard.
Yeah. And the ones that took longer were like computer game companies that had no idea how to do it. Like, Trilobite and Sierra both had no idea how to film people in front of a green screen. And so they spent so much time correcting for the fact that they had no idea what they were doing. Mm-hmm. Whereas the movie companies were a little better at that aspect.
You mean tape on the green screen or blue screen?
Blue screen, yes.
Wasn't the right color? Yeah. Classic.
All right. Let's plunge deep into October 1994. Carl, prepare yourself. Look ahead, straight ahead, and be enraptured. Or something. I don't know. All right. I believe that Alex said that from Console Wars, the retailer that he was thinking about who forced Nintendo into buybacks, was Walmart, but it was actually Target.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
You got the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy quote that you get wrong, that I will correct in full here. The quote is, "It is said that despite its many glaring and occasionally fatal inaccuracies, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy itself has outsold the Encyclopedia Galactica because it is slightly cheaper and because it has the words 'Don't Panic' in large friendly letters on the cover." I will suffer no Douglas Adams misquotes. The Carl was making a comment about the TV industry as distinct from the movie industry, or maybe it was the tech industry. I don't know. Yeah, it's been a long time. But either way, it's not, Carl. These things are not distinct anymore. TV is all owned by, there's no separation of TV from the movie studios. It was once upon a time, but not anymore.
Okay. I honestly can't remember the context of whether or not I was talking about production or the way that it's marketed or monetized. I have no idea. So I'll take your word for it.
We'll all be taking our word for it. Now for some legal shenanigans. The Gussin patent that was spoken about here, that a guy tried to sue all the companies for the thing that he did, or maybe it was Nintendo specifically for Mario Paint, it might have been. But that patent specifically related to the LJN video art, one of the most disappointing quote-unquote consoles of all time. And a wonderful AVGN episode.
True.
Can't go wrong with AVGN and LGN. Two great tastes that taste great together.
Also, the Galoob case with the Game Genie, it should be noted that that was not about patents. That was about copyright. Other intellectual property.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Carl made the case something about Japanese game designers not being very well known in Japan, but that is quite wrong. They were way better known in Japan than most game designers were in the US. In the UK, it might have been about equal, I think, because it's just that we don't have access to a lot of the magazines. Well, we do now. Like, this is a thing that's been developing. But they had named developers giving interviews of these things. Occasionally, you'd see someone like Yuji Horii of Dragon Quest fame on TV talking to people, and that was something you didn't even get in the UK, like, unless it was like a very tiny like news segment on some very side BBC thing. Like so in Japan, Japanese game designers were better known than they were in the US.
First Japanese game designing superstar, Masanobu Endo, who was well known by 1985 by the general public.
Now, does this also cover people who are doing work inside studios like Konami and Capcom, where even in the credits they're using pseudonyms?
Well, by the 90s, that's not what they're doing. They are not really using the pseudonyms anymore. Some people are, but it's not as prevalent. We know what those people are at that point. But like even in Konami and Capcom case, there was a time when they were kind of trying to hide it, but at the same time, like, if you go on Shmuplations and look at some of their translated interviews, there's a Gradius interview from 1985 where they use the designers' real names. And it might even be in the game that they don't use that. It's never been like a strict policy kind of thing. I don't think there's been a game studio that's just like, you cannot talk about these things. It's just like, it's a culture, and then it evolves in an interesting way.
Gotcha.
Even Masanobu Endo went by Evezu, but he was a well-known person.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I'm just looking up, for example, the arcade credits for Street Fighter 2. Everybody on there was using a pseudonym. But that's 91, so.
Yeah, I think it was kind of a transitional thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the pseudonyms were still being used throughout the 80s on the games themselves. I mean, I don't think Miyamoto was credited
He was
on stuff
Miya-Han.
before was not credited on stuff until the SNES. But yeah, there's kind of a weird difference between, how they credited them and how they sometimes gave interviews on television.
Gotcha. Yeah, because Street Fighter Alpha 1995, the arcade credits are also still completely in synonyms, no actual names given. Except for the voice actors. The voice actors are credited.
I feel like at that point it was more just like a formality. Like that's just what you do in the Street Fighter credits, rather than it being an actual policy from on high. It's a thing that needs to be examined a little bit more.
And there also was something of a difference between independent contractors and people that worked for the companies. So like, for instance, on Final Fantasy, Terada and Amano and Gabelli are all credited in the credits because they were all technically contractors and didn't work for Square, whereas the whole rest of the team is just Square department so-and-so. Like even Sakaguchi isn't credited.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm now looking at Resident Evil 2, and there we do have the full credits. So yeah, it's probably a company to company thing, but also a just tradition thing at that point.
Yeah. And I think that's probably why Dragon Quest as well was so early, because technically they were all independent contractors.
Gotcha. Now that's a question that would be awesome to look into as to how that developed inside the Japanese market.
And even more broadly, because like that famous story of Atari people can't put their names on stuff, that it's a little more complicated than you think. Anyhow, off of Street Fighter, speaking of fighting games, I sent Carl a link for the Mortal Kombat stage show, which shall be in the show notes.
Yes.
Huzzah.
It is bizarre.
PG-13ing, stuff. I mean, they did that to the movie too, so it's like whatever. I don't even find it as all that notable. It's just a thing that they did.
Yeah. Hey, we had a He-Man stage show back in the day and a Thundercats one, so why not Mortal Kombat, right?
Indeed.
And finally, Alex, I'm afraid I must disappoint you, for the Street Fighter movie was released on a Friday. But for you, it was Tuesday. So that is the end of October 1994. Carl can stop looking straight ahead like a predator and return to being prey for the video game news of November 1994.
84.
All right, yeah, we're doing.
We haven't made it to 94 yet.
Okay.
I'm still working through over 2,000 pages of Lexus printout for November of 94.
He says he doesn't know how the shows got longer. I know how the shows got longer.
All right, Carl.
You try doing a search for the word video game in 1 month of 1994 through every newspaper on the planet. It is insane. Okay, sorry.
Carl, be on your way.
Ethan, as always, thank you for your service.
Bye.
I mean, I guess we must have said some of those things, Carl, because Ethan's probably listened to it way more recently than I have, which is basically when I said it. I'm a little skeptical we said some of the things we said, but I mean, that's why we have a Department of Corrections to keep us honest. That's not a knock on Ethan. I'm just like, wow, did I really say that?
Yeah, I think I don't think we were as all encompassing as all that, but you know what? Now that we've corrected everything and put it into a closer order, we should be able to get back to our old, give Ethan a little bit of counterpoint when he criticizes us in the future.
Indeed.
So let's turn on the time machine and head back 52 years to November of 1974.
1974.
You'll talk to the computer.
After the eyes flash.
Welcome back to November of 1974. Alex, what's our only headline?
Well, we may only have one, Carl, but it is a big one as creative computing debuts.
David All's Creative Computing magazine, dedicated primarily to the use of computing in education, has debuted. The magazine will go on to be one of the first major publications in the computer field.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a milestone for a couple of reasons, but I mean, the big reason that it's a milestone is that this is the first magazine that is dedicated to the concept, fully dedicated to the concept of personal computing for personal use. Obviously, it's 74. The first computer kits have barely arrived. The Altair hasn't arrived yet. So it's not about what we call the personal computer, but it is about personal computing. Just get on a computer and see what fun and educational stuff you can do for your own edification.
Yeah, and I mean, I read through the first issue. The link is down below in the show notes because archive.org has it. And there's so many interesting articles in it that are basically targeting things like schools and school boards on, what does it mean to have this terminal, or what should you be looking for, and all this other stuff to facilitate usage of the machines. It's a really interesting perspective because they're really trying to help people come to grips with these machines and what you can do with them and what it means to have access to them. So, yeah.
Exactly. And it's a pretty, I was just going to say, it's a pretty well-known story, but he actually deliberately overprinted that first issue by several thousand and gave those extra copies away for free to schools.
Really? That makes sense. I mean, you'd think something as niche as this, the first issue might be really hard to come by, but there's really good scans of it on archive. There's actually 2 different scans of that first issue.
Yeah, he printed, I think, about 8,000 of them, but only about like 2,000 or something like that were sold. The rest he literally just gave away to schools.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I requested an interview with him a couple years ago, but he politely declined. He said that his mental faculties weren't quite up to it anymore, and he was like, he did want to give another interview.
Yeah, which is totally fair. I mean, thankfully he has given several over the years, but yeah, he is one of the true pioneers of personal computing. Of course, 101 Basic Computer Games as well.
Yes.
Was doing all the work with DEC on educational systems before striking out on his own here with creative computing. So a true legend in the field and a truly legendary magazine that persisted for decades. So
yeah, and we've used it persistently almost since the beginning of this podcast. It's always on the read list.
Indeed.
So, okay, well, that's all we got for 1974. Let's turn on the time machine and go forward 10 years to November of 1984.
Worldwide electronic violence. 1984. Intelligence collapse.
An awful lot of product that was inferior.
Welcome back to November of 1984. Alex, what's our first headline?
Well, it is a sign of the times we were living in 1984. More death and decay as Atari claims Coleco to exit UK console market.
Or at least that's what Atari UK has claimed in a press release. Quote, Coleco, the nearest rival of Atari's best-selling 2600 video computer system, are withdrawing from the marketplace, leaving Atari as the unchallenged leaders. End quote. Ideal Toys, Coleco's UK distributor, was quick to repudiate this statement, as was Coleco itself, but according to Popular Computing Weekly, Atari's UK's managing director Simon Westbrook said on November 9th, "We have it on good authority that Coleco is withdrawing."
Excuse me, Carl. The imaginary person in my ear says that we have a breaking news story. Coleco exits the UK markets.
Coleco has officially exited the UK market. CBS, which was manufacturing the consoles in the US, is no longer going to continue to do so, according to Philip Gibbs, distributor Ideal Toys' director of marketing. Remainder stock of an estimated 160,000 carts and 40,000 consoles has been bought by Hyde Park Clothing Company, although Hyde Park denies these figures. CBS continues to deny rumors that they will see sales of the Atom computer after Christmas.
Yes, their denials hold a lot of water. And just for a clarification for people that don't know, Ideal Toys was actually owned by CBS in this time period. So that's the connection there.
That's the connection. And just because I didn't put it in the notes, so the first article we had was from the 15th of November, and this one was from the 29th of November. So, yes. I
mean, the UK console market tends to get overlooked in this period, and for good reason. It was relatively small. But a point that I've tried to make recently in one of my episodes is that it did exist. And it did vanish in the crash. Now, so, the people that say there was no crash in the UK, I mean, look, most people were playing games on the Spectrum or the BBC Micro. I mean, I know that. I mean, I understand that these consoles suddenly disappearing didn't mean that suddenly no one was playing games in the UK. But it is true that there was a UK console market, such as it was, and then there wasn't one. So in that sense, the crash was happening in Europe as well. It's just that the impact didn't feel so huge because of where people were going to get their games.
Very true. And also we have to remember that all of these, the major players were all American companies at this point. So, they were not going to keep the production alive just because the UK or European market was there, because it wasn't big enough to sustain that.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, I am getting another breaking news story in the ear. Parker Brothers abandons UK.
Parker Brothers has announced that they will no longer be publishing game software in the UK. According to Popular Computing Weekly, Parker Brothers began to encounter problems when Atari dropped the price of their 2600 games to just £10 each, while Parker Brothers was still charging £30. A Parker Brothers spokesperson also commented that their 84 to 85 British product lineup would be scuttled, in part because they were relying on discs for their C64 games and cartridges for their Spectrum titles, expensive formats that rely on high margins, and, quote, the market share wasn't large enough, end quote.
Yeah, so that's interesting to see them talking about leaving the computer market as well. But of course, that completely makes sense because as an American company, they were targeting discs and cartridges, and that is not where the average British teenager was putting their game allowance into it. It's a cassette-based market. They're trying to be high-end in a market that is not ready to be high-end.
Exactly. And it's interesting with the C64 disc thing makes sense because the US market was a disc market, and there is some retro engineering necessary to turn a disc game into a cassette game. It's easy to take a cassette game and put it on disc. The other way around is not always easy. And in addition to that, we also have the situation here, these cartridges for the Sinclair Spectrum. There were not a lot of them. This was a format that, similar to the micro drives, didn't get a lot of play. You had to have an extra add-on for the Speccy to be able to play them. But if you go online, and I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole on this, So Parker Brothers titles for the Speccy included Popeye, Return of the Jedi, Star Wars, and Panama Joe. So basically a lot of titles that they had already released for the 2600, for example. And they would release some of them on cassette later on because that kind of worked. The cartridges were really small. While prototype ROM images are available online for all of these and more, the ROM carts would be loaded via the Interface 2 add-on and would be limited to 16K.
Mm-hmm.
That is not a lot of data.
No, sir.
No. So, yeah, that's just to give some extra background information on what Parker Brothers was trying to sell. And there was no way you were going to be paying 4 or 5 times what a disc game, let alone what a cassette game was going to cost for a game that fit into 16K.
Indeed. But just so you people don't think that it's only the American companies that are running into difficulty in the United Kingdom because of their little crash, it turns out that in the wider world, high tech isn't UK's savior.
The Guardian newspaper reports on November 2nd that contrary to forecasts, the information technology industry has not increased the number of people it employs by 4% since 1980, and instead has seen the number of people working in the industry drop by 12% since then. This is a big blow as many had pinned their hopes on tech to balance out massive employment losses in other industries. Many of the youngsters learning to use computers, though, through their home computer boom many of the youngsters learning to use computers through the home computer boom are still many years away from proper employment.
Indeed, this was one of the hopes that Margaret Thatcher had, and something that Margaret Thatcher invested in very seriously, which is why you got the whole BBC Micro official computer of the BBC and the government and all of that stuff. But, you know, the fact of the matter is, you know, in the old line businesses, they weren't going to compete. I mean, companies like IBM and Olivetti are just already way too established in traditional mainframes, minis, etc. You know, the hope was really on the rise of this personal computer sector, but as we've talked about in so many episodes, it's not that kind of sector yet. There's a nice cottage industry going in Spectrum games, C64 games starting to pick up as well, and the kids are really getting into it because of this push in the schools, but none of that is practical as a major industry yet. It's still very cottage.
Exactly. And it doesn't really count as full-time employment in most of the cases. If, you know, some kid makes a game and then sells it off, they don't count as employed, for God's sake. Although,
Exactly.
you know, this is right around the time when Ocean is going to start actually employing a handful of people in-house. But yeah, this is not the savior, and we're going into a Christmas period that is going to be very, very sad for a lot of people.
Indeed. Turning then to the Coinop industry, where I'm sad to report the news is not any better. We have reports that Coinop earnings crater.
Under the editorial title of, quote, The Rape of an Industry, end quote, Playmeter Magazine's yearly survey shows that the average Coinop video game is only bringing in $53 a week, down from $140 a week in 1981. The survey results show a drop of over $2 billion in coin drop year over year, down to just $4.5 billion, and way down from the 1982 peak of $8.9 billion. The operator population dropped by 2,000. Operators believe that they need to be making $104 per week for 12.2 months to break even, but that the average game's earnings period is only 8.5 months. The magazine's editor, Ralph C. Laley III, claims that the downfall is part of a conspiracy by a handful of game makers to sabotage the industry, drive their competitors into bankruptcy, and dissolve operator resistance to a move to their ultimate market goal, video lottery machines.
How's that for a conspiracy theory? We do have to remember that Playmeter is a magazine targeted at operators. So I think this is meant to be inflammatory to try to stir something up and shame manufacturers into I don't know what. But hopefully he doesn't believe all the things he's spouting there, because that ain't quite it. We've already, obviously the crash has already been going on in Coinop. We don't necessarily have to reiterate. We are at the nadir. That was kind of an 82 to 84 crash. So we are truly at the nadir of that crash. And video games, they just got too repetitive. Either they were too challenging or too boring, nothing kind of in between, same old score chasing. People were tired. And a lot of new companies got in on credit. A lot of new operators got in on credit just as the coin drop was stopping, and ended up in a massive credit crisis and closure of a lot of arcades. And here we are at the nadir of the U.S. coin-op industry in this time period.
Yeah. And on the video lottery thing, and I have not been adding this to the notes, but for at least a year and a half now, there's been a ton of articles about this move to video poker and video lottery machines, and a ton of efforts to liberalize laws in different jurisdictions around the United States concerning gambling, where a lot of people are thinking, oh, it's just around the corner that we'll have gambling everywhere. Yeah. And it doesn't happen for a few more decades, but Though
some stuff like the video poker does come in. One thing we do have to remember as well, like in the point of view of this editorial, is at this time, the street location is still generally considered the bread and butter. It has been completely overwhelmed by the fad for arcades, but that's a relatively new phenomenon. The street location, like the bar, the tavern, the bowling alley, the
movie theater,
I was going to say, the convenience store, the movie theater, was more the bread and butter of the industry. And I don't think anyone was seeing suddenly arcades as we think of them being full of nothing but video poker machines and lottery machines, but they were seeing the bars full of all of those things instead of other types of coin-op. And some of that comes true in the short term, even though the gambling doesn't come in. Video poker machines and other games like that do displace a lot of video games in those settings. And of course, as you said, a few decades later, then the gambling machines come in. And if you go into a bar today, that is exactly the kind of coin-op you see in most street locations. So just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they aren't out to get you at least a little bit. I don't think it was a grand conspiracy, but it is true that the street location would be overwhelmed in a tide of poker games and gambling machines, etc.
Oh, this is true. This is true. And one of the other things that they're always talking about, and this is really big in the letters pages of magazines like Playmeter that are targeting the operators, is the fact that those home games that, they're coming to get us. That the home games are what are killing us, and the manufacturers should stop porting coin-op games to the home systems, because that's just bad business. Yes. Oh, by the way, what's the next story all about?
Well, Carl, funny you should mention games in the home and the arcade, because Nintendo pushes VS packs and standards.
At a meeting of distributors in Seattle, Nintendo of America promoted its Versus system. Is it VS or Versus?
It's usually Versus.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure, because I was called it Versus. Its Versus system and 2 new packs for the Coinop system, Versus Pinball and Versus Golf, as well as announcing Versus conversions of its existing arcade hits Punch-Out!, Donkey Kong, and Donkey Kong Jr. Frank Ballou Nintendo's VP of marketing emphasized that Nintendo will not be doing any closeout pricing to help give distributors confidence in their investments. They also said that they don't want jobbers selling their products and want to honor distributors' territorial exclusivity.
Yeah, so this is a specifically Nintendo of America pivot because Nintendo in Japan, largely because of upcoming revisions to regulatory laws, is getting the heck out of Coinop. They're done.
Yeah.
D-U-N, done. But Nintendo of America still wants to be in that business. They don't have the family computer, the NES, yet. They don't have this alternate revenue stream. Their entire raison d'etre is still Coinop and kind of Game & Watch, but it didn't go well. So exactly. They need to take a stand and continue to be in that business. And so that's why they are going to continue pushing the Versus system. They have presumably lobbied Japan to make sure some of the old hits are also available on the Versus system, and why they're saying, no, we're not closing out and we're not giving to jobbers, because they want to project the air of we are still here and we are still going to be here, because the parent company is giving very different signals in Japan. They're not quite out yet. I don't think they officially leave till 85, but the rumblings are happening, and the focus is just not there anymore in Japan.
Yeah, and the closeout pricing thing is also explained in the article, that as a lot of the arcade companies, like you said, a lot of them came in, a lot of them have been leaving, and there's so many of these machines where an operator paid top dollar for it, and 2 or 3 months later, the manufacturer's like, oh crap, this thing isn't selling, let's just dump it on the market. And then suddenly there's a ton of these all over, and the operator that paid top dollar never gets a return on their investment. And this is basically them saying, hey, you don't have to worry about there being a ton of Versus Golfs out there, because we are never dropping the price on this thing. Mm-hmm. But we have to also remember, all the Versus system is a Famicom. I don't care how much people say it's not, it's a Famicom. So, these games are all going to come home in nice little black boxes with cool sprite-like art on the front.
But they're not there yet, and that's the important thing. And then, of course, the other aspect of this is that if you are going to stay in Coinop, you need to have some kind of interoperability, interchangeability. Doesn't have to be cartridges. It can be easy board swaps as well. But the days of a dedicated special Snowflake cabinet with a dedicated special Snowflake circuit board are completely gone, which is why another one of our big Coinop headlines this month is that Atari Games gets into systems.
Atari Games, the arcade division of Atari that was not sold off to Jack Tramiel and is still part of Warner, has announced that they will be leaning heavily into system hardware to help reduce the cost to operators of buying new games. At the upcoming AMOA show, they will be showing their System 1 hardware, which will debut with Marble Madness, while their System 2 hardware will debut with Paperboy. They will also be showing off a kit for their Star Wars vector game, Empire Strikes Back, the third Star Wars title. Return of the Jedi is still selling well as a standalone cabinet.
Yep, and this again, it's the times. You cannot be selling a brand new cabinet every time you sell a Coinop game anymore, because the economics do not work. Atari doesn't want to go full cartridge, but they're at least saying, we're going to give you a system. We're going to be selling it with this game, but we are going to produce other games on the same board later. And instead of buying a whole new cabinet from us, you can buy a kit that has the new board and some new cabinet art and go from there.
Yeah. And I was kind of surprised because I did not know this ahead of time, that Empire came out after Return of the Jedi was already in the arcades. And I then also did a little bit of checking, and the Return of the Jedi arcade game is running on the same hardware as Crystal Castle.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows. Oh my God, that game is terrible.
Indeed. Yeah, and Empire Strikes Back was seen as a way to basically, because the other problem is that the games that were hits, that actually did hit big, are just kind of sitting there. Nobody wants to play them anymore, but companies also don't want to spend the money to replace them. So there's a big business in this time. Like Donkey Kong Jr. could be put in a Donkey Kong cabinet. And this was a way of being like, we sold a lot of Star Wars cabinets. We need to leverage that, because if we don't, then some other third party is going to put out a conversion kit that's used in those cabinets, and we're losing a sale. And so Empire Strikes Back is a conversion kit for Star Wars. It gets more life out of those Star Wars cabinets. And if they don't do it, someone else will, because definitely in this time period, a lot of kit companies are out there, and those kit companies are often advertising, we'll work in any Defender cabinet, we'll work in any Pac-Man cabinet, because those games sold in massive numbers, but now they're just out there. Nobody's playing them, but nobody wants to replace the cabinets either because of the cost structure. So it makes a lot of sense that they would retroactively decide, oh, yeah, we should do this kit. And we can call it Empire Strikes Back. We skipped that one.
I wonder if they bought the license for all three right up front.
Yeah, that I don't know. That's a very good question.
I mean, it kind of makes sense that they would have, probably around the same time that they cut the deal for E.T.
I mean, so I assume that they got all these rights in 82. The same deal that they threw $1 million into Lucasfilm Games and got the rights to Ball Blazer and I assume it's all connected as part of the same licensing scheme.
That's true. That would have made sense. That would make sense.
Absolutely.
And you would move Return of the Jedi forward in the release schedule just because of the movie coming out in 83.
Yeah. Well, right. Exactly. Because, they're doing this deal after the first two movies are already out. And I don't know that they would have even gone back and done an Empire game, or at least not in the way they did it here, except that it's like, okay, we're in a market now. We sold like 12,000 or whatever it was Star Wars cabinets. The way it works today is if you got a cabinet out there that has 10,000 or more units, the next step is to make a kit for it to extend that life. And so it's like, well, let's make a kit for it. And we haven't done Empire Strikes Back, so we'll call it Empire Strikes Back. The kids will love it.
And doing a kit of Return wouldn't have worked because everybody hated Return, apparently.
Indeed. Absolutely. But those kits are a big deal in this time period, Carl, which is why Konami buys Interlogic.
Konami Industry Company Limited of Japan has purchased Interlogic Incorporated of Elk Grove Village outside of Chicago. Ben Harrell, founder.
Just a correction there. It is Ben Harrell. He's Israeli. He's Israeli. So it's often spelled Harel without the apostrophe or the dash, but I think technically there's a dash, HAR-EL, Ben Harrell.
I found it written both ways, and I wasn't sure if it was just a typo or a or they took it over on. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Ben Harrell, founder and president of Interlogic, will become the new president of Konami's U.S. subsidiary, Konami Incorporated, which will now move to Elk Grove. Interlogic, together with Centauri, were Konami's U.S. licensees for North American distribution of the company's games. All future titles will now be distributed by Konami Inc. Interlogic had specialized in conversion kits as opposed to full systems.
Yep, this is the trend in this time period. It is the Japanese companies taking control of their own destiny in the United States. There had been very little of that before that. Taito had a factory because Space Invaders was so big. Namco had an American subsidiary, though they still licensed games. They weren't making their own. But now that the American market is falling apart and the whole industry is moving to kits, which are a lot less of a deal to manufacture locally or to ship from overseas, the Japanese companies see their chance to actually establish their own presence in the United States. And one way they often do that is by buying an existing company. And so that's what's happening here. Konami did have a subsidiary, but that subsidiary was basically a licensing subsidiary. Now they're going to get into doing their own, at the very least, board manufacturing. I think they may I think they are one of the companies that ends up contracting with Grand Products to do their cabinets. But it's a new day for the Japanese companies in the United States, which will just go over so well in the political climate of the time, I am sure.
You mean 1986's Gung Ho is not going to be representative of any emotions in the ether? Yeah. That was a great movie. Don't know if it holds up, but it was a great movie. Okay.
All right. But even though the arcade market is in a period of intense transition, some folks are still trying to keep on keeping on like it's 1982 as Twin Galaxies looking for world records.
The Twin Galaxies arcade may be gone, but the Twin Galaxies scoreboard continues. And Walter Day has organized a series of competitions in 9 cities across the U.S. to find the highest scores in dozens of arcade games for entry in the 1985 edition of the Guinness Book of World Records.
I mean, you can't blame a guy for trying. He found himself a niche and he's keeping with it. And obviously, I realize Twin Galaxies continues on through all sorts of delightful controversies. But, it is a bit out of step with this time because score chasing is no longer going to be the dominant mode of interacting with these games, which is why in later decades, people that still care about Twin Galaxies get obsessed with things like the Pac-Man kill screen and the high score in Donkey Kong, because that's really all there is. People got tired of score chasing, and so games in this period are shifting to the idea of giving you a variety of experiences for your money instead of a repetitive score chasing experience. But you can't blame Walter Day for trying to hang on to what he built, because he did build something very interesting and quite unique in that time period.
Yeah. And it's weird because I've only ever owned one copy of the Guinness Book of World Records, and it happened to be the 1985 edition.
Well, there you go.
And so I've actually linked to that page in the book in the show notes. It's up on archive.org. And so you can actually look at all of the scores that ended up in there. It's only one page, nothing big, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah, a little personal history there. On a side note, my main interaction with Guinness is having to
Stout?
Yeah, it's stout, yes. With the Guinness book is having to expunge it from Wikipedia as a source for all sorts of nonsense.
Oh, no.
Because the Guinness folks have no idea.
Oh, of course not.
Because, I mean, they're not, they're just having fun, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, they're not supposed to have a good idea, but sometimes people take it way too seriously. Like, these are actual records, and it's like, guys.
It was originally meant as a book of trivia to have at the bar just to keep drunks entertained.
Exactly.
That's the whole purpose of it.
It's the whole purpose.
It's fun for that purpose.
Right. Just don't. Yeah, I have nothing against the Guinness Book as a concept. I'm just saying, don't use it for things it's not meant to be used for. That's all I'm saying. Moving on. We do have a console section. It is, not surprisingly, very short. In fact, it is one single entry. ColecoVision rides Cabbage Patch Kid coattails.
If you bought a ColecoVision before November 15th, you'd get a Cabbage Patch doll by Christmas. This promotion helped move the consoles in a video game market that Merrill Lynch analyst Harold Fogel termed, quote, nearly dead, end quote. As Coleco still has $300 million worth of Cabbage Patch orders outstanding that they say will only be able to fulfill 2/3 of.
Well, geez, Carl, I'm glad that they managed to combat the effects of getting involved in their fad business with something that will be a steady and reliable earner for years to come, like the Cabbage Patch Kid doll.
Oh, yes. I am sure that come Christmas of 1985, all those people who have now waited 2 Christmases to get their Cabbage Patch doll will still be dying to get one.
But all kidding aside, this was a smart move. I mean,
oh yeah,
the video game thing is dead. Their last hope, and it's not much of a hope, but their last hope is that they can get a critical mass of consoles into stores that will maintain some low level of interest in the software. so that they can make some money and kind of come out of this industry gradually instead of falling off a cliff. I mean, I don't think they're fooling themselves into thinking that this will make the ColecoVision a long-term viable market, but I think they're hoping that will at least allow them to have a softer landing by supporting some additional software sales from people that otherwise would have never bothered with the hardware, because everyone wants a Cabbage Patch doll. Everyone wants 5 Cabbage Patch dolls. I don't know why. I was alive in this period. I wasn't conscious in this period, but I was alive and a kid when Cabbage Patch dolls were still being sold. I realize I'm not their target demographic. It's not like I had other dolls either, but I don't see the appeal. I don't understand.
They were horribly ugly. And just to give you a little side note, one of the classes I teach at the university is a legal English class, and I use a lot of old Judge Wapner episodes of People's Court.
People's Court.
So every couple of months, I scour YouTube to see if somebody has uploaded another old one. And I recently watched one where it's 2 people fighting over a Cabbage Patch doll because, one lady who had a whole bunch of them agreed to sell one to some other lady, and the other lady had paid a deposit on this Cabbage Patch. They're talking like $70 for this damn doll. And, then she decided no, she wasn't going to come back and get it. And the lady who got the deposit wanted the full price now, because she was like, well, I didn't sell it to somebody else, and now they've dropped in price, and it's going back and forth. It's very, very funny.
That is hilarious. I love that for us.
Oh, yeah. Now, a quick little side note here. Fogel also says that they have stopped listing home computers in the toys category as more and more people are using the machines for more serious pursuits like family budgeting.
Yeah, sure they are.
Yeah, but I think that this and this kind of is a transition to our next story. Mm-hmm. I think that what Merrill Lynch is talking about here is that more and more people, at least in the US market, we're not talking about the European market.
Of course.
More and more people are starting to move away from home computers, and the definition of home computer as we understand it today from a historical standpoint is getting mixed up with the personal computer. And I think that that's what he's going with, because it's a sign of how many more personal computers are entering into this, and how many toy stores and mass retailers are kind of moving away from the home computer.
No, you're absolutely correct. I mean, just 5 years later, terms like home computer and personal computer are interchangeable terms. But in this period, they mean very different things. A personal computer is maybe 1,000, maybe 1,500 or less, and focused on more adult activities. And a home computer is 600 or less and mostly focused on games. And I think that's the recognition here. I don't know that more people are using the machines for more serious pursuits so much as fewer people are using them for unserious pursuits. Like, I believe them that they have figures that show that the percentage of people that they survey using it for that is growing, but I think it probably has more to do with the percentage using it for other things shrinking than the percentage using it for that actually growing, because it feels like it's still way too early for that. But who knows? Maybe everyone is getting a PC and a Lotus 123 and making all sorts of graphs and charts about their personal finances. I mean, I was not budgeting in 1984, so I don't know. But
Newsroom isn't out yet, so we can't use that as the excuse on the C64 for productivity yet. So
indeed. But regardless of what I think, it is certainly true that in this period, in this month, IBM conquers Comdex.
The New York Times reports that IBM's PC-AT computer, their new Intel 286 computer, was the king of the Comdex computer show. The machine that will retail between $4,000 and $6,000 was far more powerful than those offered by the clone makers, and only slightly more expensive than IBM's own systems. Many are predicting that this move by the very well-funded IBM will mean the end of clone makers as software makers will begin to move to supporting the faster system, and that this new standard, with its lack of 100% backward compatibility, will also be the beginning of many varying PC standards. Apple's John Scully said, quote, "The ground rules are already beginning to change. Full IBM compatibility will become harder and harder. Companies that thought they had a low-cost entry into a high-growth, high-profit industry are discovering that the future is going to be a lot tougher than they thought." End quote.
That, not the IBM compatibility part, but the rest of that quote could really apply to Apple. Couldn't it, Carl?
Hey, when you think about it, it's going to be a very tough slog for Apple going forward.
So, I mean, obviously this misses the mark. I mean, it's hard to predict the future, but, I think there's a couple of the things that they didn't count on. First of all, they didn't understand Moore's Law very well, and also didn't understand that the 286 was development on the 286 was primarily done before the PC was a thing. And so the 286 is not actually well optimized to be the CPU of an IBM PC or PC compatible. Whereas the next chip they're making, the 386, was created with the PC market in mind. And so they thought the clone makers were all going to run and hide because they were all of these low-end, cheap companies that were just going to sink back into the shadows. Well, some of those companies like Compaq were major VC-funded companies. And so they're like, okay, IBM is going to try to, beat us on technology and develop a new standard. Well, there's a lot of us, and we can all band together, and we can define our own standards for things. And also, we can just skip this stupid 286 stuff and move right to the good stuff, the 386. And so for those reasons, the clone makers aren't going to quite go away in the way that our friend here in the New York Times is predicting.
Yeah, and this is another thing. A couple of different sources mention this. Going into Comdex, a whole mess of predictions were that IBM's AT was going to be facing off against a whole bunch of 286 machines from clone makers.
Yeah. Nope.
And it didn't happen. The clone makers just weren't there with 286s. And so everybody in the days after Comdex is jumping to this conclusion. And people are starting to try to figure this out. There's a lot of talk coming out of this. So a couple of notes here. First, apparently the main reason for incompatibility is coming from programs bypassing DOS to improve performance, like Lotus 123 does, but this can also impact compatibility, like with the TopView GUI, which doesn't seem to work with a lot of AT hardware or software. So again, it's what you were saying. The 286, it's not optimized for this, and all these workarounds that people were developing to speed up the original PC are not working with this new chip. And then another fun little side note, another source of fear at Comdex is the number of computer companies that have hit hard times or filed for bankruptcy in the wake of the PC shakeout over the last 12 months. And we haven't talked about that a lot here, but there's it's mainly been in the business side of things. That's why I've kind of not mentioned it, but this is a good time to mention it, that there's been a lot of these clone makers hitting hard times. This has also spooked venture capitalists who are looking to other fields like biomedicine for opportunities, and even the most 80s of all trends, the leveraged buyout, is looking grim as banks are skittish about giving value to intangible intellectual property or computer equipment with fast depreciation rates. Kind of makes you wonder what lessons could be learned for the modern age about rapid investing large amounts of speculative money into quickly depreciating hardware and intellectual property. I wonder what could be a possible comparison today.
And data centers. Don't forget data centers.
Yeah. That's kind of where I was going with that.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I was following your flow. I wasn't.
Yeah. So, but this is actually something that people are talking about in the business sections. They're like,
Yes.
Everybody's like, maybe we should go in a different direction. And I know there's a lot of notes on this one. Believe me, I left so many more out. The big topic in Computerworld, one of the magazines, was networking, with both network cards and modems abounding at Comdex. The PC modem introduced by IBM did not fare well, though, in comparison with those based on the Ethernet standards. Microsoft also introduced, so IBM is trying to control the standard here. They come out with their own modem and everybody's like, no, which really is kind of the first moment of IBM not being able to set the standard as far as I can tell.
That makes sense. Yep.
Yeah. And Microsoft also introduced Word for the Mac at this Comdex. So the whole idea of the GUI-based word processor from Microsoft gets introduced. And the runner-up for biggest thing was laser printers, with every major player showing one off.
All of that Xerox PARC technology coming out into the world, Ethernet, laser printers, WYSIWYG.
Oh yeah, everybody is now like, okay, we have the magic keys.
That kimono's wide open at this point.
Oh yeah. And one last big thing, Sony also introduced its CD-ROM standard at Comdex, coming in at 500 megabytes. Initial examples will be going out to potential customers in the coming months. Obviously, that's still a little ways off, but again, it's Sony creating a new standard and other people, and it's not the final version of it, just like with the 3.5-inch floppy, but it is interesting to see that they're sort of the standard bearer here.
Indeed. But the competition is not standing still as the Apple ad spree continues.
While 1984 was a record year for Apple's ad spend, 1985 looks to outpace it with a $200 million campaign focused on what they are calling event marketing, with Apple buying exclusive ad space during high-profile miniseries like Ellis Island, or events like Dustin Hoffman's Death of a Salesman, or being the sole advertiser in Newsweek's post-election issue. Some analysts say that all of this won't help Apple gain ground on IBM unless they start to focus on the business market and move away from their, quote, one person, one computer model, which they seem to be doing with the introduction of Apple Talk, shareable hard drives, and the introduction of Lotus Jazz software. So
yeah,
I looked into some of these ad campaigns and oh my God, they must, it's insane that they're like, yeah, this thing that millions of people are watching on TV, we're going to advertise this super expensive computer. That makes sense.
The company's such a mess in this period. And, of course, they are in 1985 going to try to push their version of the modern office, their version of linking computers through Ethernet and laser printers and all of that. And they're going to get creative with the marketing campaign around that. And it is so not going to go well. But they've got a lot of hubris right now. After the buzz of their Super Bowl ad and after the rapturous critical reviews of the Mac, they haven't fully translated into sales of the Mac, but they're feeling high on the hog right now, which is why Scully felt like he could so confidently talk about, IBM and how big spending doesn't get you anywhere. It's like, well, John, okay.
Yeah,
there don't happen to be any mirrors in there in your house, are there?
No. And I mean, $200 million is a lot of money, but
indeed,
U.S. News and World Report is reporting that the computer hardware and software industries will end up spending over $1.2 billion in 1984 on TV, newspaper, and magazine ads.
Yeah.
It's getting super expensive and super competitive.
It truly is. And the problem, specifically with Apple, it's not so much the amount of money, which, like you said, seems to be about in line, but the problem is they're spending the money on the stuff that isn't selling. Like they're being sustained by the Apple II, and that is not what they're marketing.
Exactly. The Apple II is still going for some reason. And it's kind of insane. I mean, the fact that they survived long enough to reinvent themselves in the 90s is still kind of amazing to me.
It was a very good IPO.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. There was an article, and I didn't include it here, from Byte magazine. And they have at this point in time, they've got a guy who is issuing reports from Japan every month. And in this month's report, he's actually come back to the States for the first time in like 6 or 7 months. And the entire article is about how he's completely shocked. He was like, last time I was in the States, there were all these different, the K Pro, and you had all these different machines. He comes back and he says, it's all just IBM compatibles or the Mac. Yeah. That's it. It's already a two-system world. And he contrasts that with how Japan is still a myriad of incompatible devices from a myriad of different companies, and how, from his point of view, there's really only those two machines left in the U.S. market. There are those two standards.
No, absolutely. Because, of course, this is a time period where the home computer market, where much of that diversity was found, is completely falling apart. And indeed, we are learning that home computer sales slump in Christmas buildup.
Early indications for the holidays are not looking rosy for home computer makers. Sales in the U.S. are down between 10 and 30% over the same period last year, despite Atari reducing the price of the 800 XL down to just $179. The C64 still leads the pack, accounting for more than 50% of home computer sales under $500. UK sales aren't looking much better, but the market is far more crowded with more players. Retailer Boots doesn't expect to have a year-over-year drop in sales, but they aren't expecting much of a bump either. TV advertising should make a difference, with the C16 and Spectrum Plus selling well, but the MSX disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, the home computer just failed to deliver on its promise, and we've talked about this before. It was supposed to be something that allowed you to do a variety of useful things, and sure, the kids can also play some games on the side. It turned out to be just game machines, and so the home computer makers tried to compensate by being like, well, fine, we'll create these bundled systems like the Plus 4 and the Atom, where we give you all of the useful software right out of the gate, so then you'll have to use it for useful things. And the cost structure just didn't make sense with what you could do with those computers. And the market is just falling apart because everyone's realized that there's nothing there. Sure, you can play games on them, but most people aren't going to pay $200 just so their kids can play some games.
Exactly. And also the problem is there's so many different ones. I mean, the Plus 4 is not compatible with the C64, isn't compatible with the VIC-20. You're constantly having to buy a new non-compatible system.
Absolutely.
And it's also probably causing a lot of confusion in the market.
I would think so. Absolutely. It's just a complete mess. And then, of course, the price wars instigated by Commodore just made sure that even those computers that were having some modicum of success could not recoup enough money to make it worth the manufacturer's while. So
exactly. Now, Adweek, that's a publication for the ad industry, reports that analysts estimate that holiday season ads for computers and computer software will reach a new record of over $100 million, led by IBM, Apple, and Commodore. Now, that's obviously U.S. numbers.
Sure.
But yeah, So Commodore is basically the last one still playing a role in that U.S. market.
And they won't be for long.
No.
Meanwhile, we already hinted at it in the previous headline, but it gets its own headline as well. Atari cuts price of 800 XL.
Well, we haven't talked about this cut yet. Because Atari has announced a cut in the price of their main 8-bit computer, the 800 XL, going into the holiday season. The price will drop from $179 to just $120.
There you go.
Yeah, so it wasn't moving at $179, but now we're going to $120. Jack Tramiel claims that this move is to pass production cost savings onto the consumer, and that Commodore could reduce the price of the C64, which sells for about $200, quote, if they wanted to, end quote. And while Tramiel sees everyone who sells computers as a competitor, he also said, quote, we sell products to individuals. That's our niche. What they want to do with them is up to them. End quote.
Indeed. And really, I mean, he's not trying to be competitive with the Atari 8-bits anymore. He's Jack Tramiel, whatever his faults, does have a pretty good understanding at this point that the 8-bit market is done for everybody. He is already in development on his 16-bit answer to the Macintosh, which will, of course, ultimately become the Atari ST. And this is just about getting what he can for the older products to keep the company afloat through all of this turmoil while he gets his new computer out. So, I mean, it's not like he's realistically expecting the Atari 8-bit line to go anywhere. He just wants a buck.
Oh, definitely. Now, a couple of quick fun notes here. Tramiel is planning on raising an additional $150 million in funding for Atari Corporation over the next 18 months with an IPO sometime in 1985.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he actually makes that. The IPO is in 85. Now,
right.
And Atari will run a Christmas ad campaign with the slogan, quote, the powerful personal computer so affordable even Scrooge would have given it, in newspapers. Budget $1.5 million.
It's cute. It's cute.
Yeah, I found a print of it. It's literally Scrooge holding up Tiny Tim and with an Atari 800. So, you know, it's there. It's trying to get the product out, and it's not going to cost him a fortune.
Indeed. Meanwhile, of course, the Japanese are still out there, though having a bit of trouble as the UK is meh on MSX.
Popular Computing Weekly has reviewed the Toshiba HX10 MSX home computer. This is the first of the much anticipated Japanese flood of computers on the UK market using the standard minimum MSX specs. The machine failed to impress the reviewer, though, as its price, £280, is way too high given the machine's weak specs. As a games machine, the C64, Amstrad, and Spectrum Plus put it to shame, and without an 80-column display, the business market will also find little to write home about.
Yeah. There's no point in an MSX in a world where there's a Spectrum.
Exactly.
Just full stop.
Yeah. Let alone a C64. It's even more expensive than a C64 at this point.
Exactly.
And you're getting what? ColecoVision level graphics? It's using the same chip as the TI 99, for God's sake.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Absolutely not. The British are having a little more success with their computers on the international market, though, as India says yes to BBC Micro.
Acorn, the makers of the BBC Micro, have cut a deal with India's Semiconductor Complex Limited, a government-owned company founded in 1976 to help establish a semiconductor industry in the country, to make BBC Micros in India. The goal is to start by assembling BBC Micro B kits, with later move to full-blown production, including the 6502 chips, which SCL has licensed from the American Rockwell Corporation. Only Acorn's proprietary ULA chips would still come from Acorn at that stage. Now, I did a bunch of background on the Semiconductor Laboratory. That institution still exists today. And it's part of this whole idea of trying to get manufacturing and high tech into the subcontinent. It's kind of interesting. I'd love to talk to somebody who was involved with the setup of that. I think there's a lot of interesting stories there.
Indeed.
But the goal of 250,000 BBCs sold as the SCL Unicorn microcomputer, that's what they were calling it, did not come to fruition, maybe due to a factory fire in 1987.
Well then.
Yeah. So there's actually, I put a link to a website that has some information on the SCL Unicorn. There's some pamphlets and stuff for it, and it's clearly just a rebadged BBC Micro. But I couldn't find anybody who's actually got a physical one. So I don't know how many units actually made it into production, how many of them made it into personal use or were just given out to schools or whatever. I have no idea. Yeah.
Interesting. But it is true that computer tech is starting to expand worldwide, though not always through capitalist channels, as the USSR copies Apple.
The Soviet Union premiered their first microcomputer, the AGAT, or AGAT, at a tech expo in 1983. Byte magazine has had a chance to go hands-on with the system and declares that it is a poorly performing Apple II clone.
That sounds about par for the course.
For
Soviet Russia.
Now, curiously enough, the Wikipedia page for the AGAT does have a couple of clarifications that I think might be legitimate. After reading the Byte article. So according to Wikipedia, about 20,000 AGATs were built between 1984 and 1990, and that according to one Soviet computer engineer, the model reviewed by Byte was a pre-production model being used to debug medical software, which lines up a little bit with what Byte was saying. Now, and this is kind of a story that repeats itself. And I've mentioned it here before. Here in Halle, where I live, there's a really cool museum for East German computer tech. And one of the things that is always going to be an issue with any of these Eastern Bloc computers is the extremely low production numbers.
Sure.
So there's going to be a much bigger market or much bigger production runs of not 6502, but Z80 based machines in the Soviet bloc. But even those are going to have such low production numbers that in East Germany, for example, imported C64s, and there was this whole system where the East German government was making money. I don't know if I mentioned it on the podcast before, something I did a deep dive on research-wise last year. They had this actual system where they were issuing catalogs. So if you had relatives who were living in West Germany, they could buy you stuff at massive markups. As if, send gifts over there. And one of the things was a C64 computer. So there ended up being more C64 computers in East Germany than East German made home computers.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, it's crazy. So
very cool. Turning our attention then back to the UK market, Sinclair working on portable.
After working with Polaroid to develop the battery technology for their portable TV and researching new battery tech for the Sinclair electric vehicle, Sinclair's MetaLab is now hard at work making a battery-powered single micro drive-powered portable version of the Speccy. No release date has been announced, but given that the screen is still being worked on, mid-85 would be the earliest possible launch date.
I love how the pitch is here. Remember our portable TV that you hated? Remember our electric vehicle that you hated? Well, now we'll give you a chance to hate our portable Sinclair computer with everybody's favorite, the microdrive.
Yeah. Well, the electric vehicle isn't out yet. We're not quite there yet.
We're not quite to the end of Micromen.
Oh, no. We will get there. We will get there. We will have to talk about the infamous BBC report on it, where it's literally Sir Clive being stuck behind a truck and getting all the fumes directly in his face. It's brilliant.
Oh.
Not as good as him trying to use his personal people mover in the 90s and then basically trying to drive over cobblestones with it. Have you seen that?
I don't believe I.
Oh no, it's also hilarious. Okay,
Uncle Clive.
I should not have done the premiere of it in the middle of downtown London, right in front of a cobblestone road. It was like, yeah. So another issue entirely, but yes. So, spoiler alert: there will be no portable Specky. But hey, he's the portable Specky is coming. Isn't that great? Got to keep the interest going because guess what?
Yes, their attempts to conquer the business world have also been not going as planned, though there is a new ray of hope as ICL goes QL.
Britain's Britain's International Computer Limited, or ICL, has announced plans to introduce the one per desk computer. The OPD will be a telecommunication-based computer built around the Sinclair QL, using most of the QL's hardware but adding a telephone, modem, and TI speech synthesizer chip, as well as including the Exchange software suite in ROM. Popular Computing Weekly reports that the machine will be sold with Sinclair's microdrives for about £1,300.
And truly, wouldn't it be a value at 5 times as much? But no, obviously, QL, commence eye roll. But this is just another sign of what we talked about earlier is we are moving into a new phase, like the IBM VisiCalc followed by the IBM PC really excited the idea of businesses having some computers around. And now the public, the increasing publicity in this time around Ethernet and networks and shared printers, shared laser printers, etc., is driving a lot of interest in the next stage of the business takeovers of computers, which is instead of, oh yeah, we're getting the accountant one because they can run Lotus 123 on it. It's like, we're going to give everyone one because they can all collaborate on it and share the even more expensive resources like the printers.
Exactly. And this device will end up being sold, unlike the portable Specky, and it's going to be sold through multiple outlets. The British Telecom is going to be selling a badge version. Australian and New Zealand telecoms are going to be selling versions that include disk drives and hard drives, not micro drives. Go figure.
Why not, Carl? Why not?
I don't know. Something about them sucking.
We might have some episodes with headlines about that.
Yeah, I believe we've talked about it in the past. So go check those out. The micro drives used by the OPD will be an improved version of the unreliable Sinclair carts, but those improvements will lead them to not be compatible with the QL micro drives. And the power supply is built into the monitor, and the machine is always on to make the phone call answering machine functions be always available.
That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, well, when you think about it from the point of view of a business, if this is the machine you're giving to the secretary,
yeah,
it might be useful, but only might. And I got another little side note here. Again, this was one of these weird deep dives I had to go in on because all these different versions are different badges and they all have slightly different hardware. It's a huge pain in the butt. But IBM has announced that they will purchase telecommunications equipment maker ROLM, which has just announced an IBM PC compatible computer that will integrate a screen and a telephone, which should put them ahead of similar efforts being developed by AT&T. This comes as IBM is promoting its new modem for the IBM PC, which is being eyed skeptically by professional magazines as it doesn't seem to match up to the existing Ethernet standards. And the reason I put this in here is just to clarify, there's a ton of talk about how AT&T, or there was a bunch of talk about how AT&T was going to take out IBM. That if you got the telecoms in on the computer business and everybody kind of knew you're going to have to move the PC online and connect it and all this stuff. So if the telecoms got into the PC market, the PC makers wouldn't really have a chance, which explains why British Telecom, Australian Telecom, and New Zealand Telecom are all selling computers suddenly. And also why IBM would buy a company that's making a PC that has a built-in telephone function. So this is kind of this little sideshow in the business world that's going on, but it will also sort of jumpstart this whole move to the telecommunication side of PC computing. Oh, and since there's a lot of QL stories this month, sorry. Sinclair has also announced a new version of the QL for early 1985 that will mimic the in-ROM exchange software packages that was basically their version of Office, of the OPD, so the one that they've put in this online thing, allowing users to access the programs without impacting the system's 128K of RAM, which has been the problem we've talked about. This new pricier model will most likely be the one that Sinclair decides to launch in the US.
Yes. They would totally do great going up against the IBM PC and the clone makers in the US.
But the Office software is in ROM now.
Good for you. But Sinclair is still trying, and so are some other peripheral makers as QL gets third-party upgrades.
Quest Automation has announced a line of hardware add-ons for Sinclair's QL business computer. Various floppy drives ranging from 200K to 800K in capacity, as well as hard drives and CPM add-ons and more advanced Office applications.
Geez, with all of that, if you squint, the QL may almost look like the business machine that it's been advertised as.
Almost. Yeah, it's like you kind of feel that it's the UK manufacturers not wanting to have to compete against the US makers by supporting the local team. The only problem is it's Sir Clive Sinclair is the local team, and he just cut too many corners on the QL. It could never be that cheap and still be usable.
No, absolutely not. Turning our attention to what remains of the upper end of the U.S. home computer market, the PC Junior gets new lease on life.
Integrate Microsystems of Rockford, Illinois, has begun selling a new touchscreen-based electronic ballot system built around IBM's PC Junior. The systems are being sold for between $1,800 and $2,800 each. The company highlights in their marketing that when the machines aren't being used for elections, unlike many of the other electronic voting systems currently hitting the market, the PC Junior-based systems can also be used for other tasks.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Use your voting systems for other tasks as well. Install lots of different programs on them. And none of which could have exploits. I love that idea. Very secure.
Well, not only that, but It's a PC Junior.
Well, yes. No, I mean, it's ridiculous on its face, but
I know.
Also, it's like, yes, we want voting machines that have all sorts of crap installed on them coming from who knows where.
Exactly. You know, this company just basically got a really sweetheart deal on a truckload of IBM PC Juniors, and that was it.
Yes.
Speaking of the PC Junior, since we probably won't be for much longer, Computerworld, another publication, has a fun little opinion piece about the PC Junior written as a Halloween tale, with PC Junior being a kid and IBM his mom, and they're going trick-or-treating, but virtually everyone is wearing a chaplain costume. It actually is kind of funny. It's like, they go to this party and everybody's chaplain, and it's like, oh, what's going on, mommy? Why doesn't anybody want to play with me? And it's, yeah. Then the Apple people show up very briefly. It's kind of funny. I do recommend checking it out.
Indeed. But from the ridiculous to the sublime, as we do have a truly noteworthy premiere this month, the Tandy 1000 debuts.
Tandy Corporation, the parent of the Radio Shack retail chain, has unveiled their new Tandy 1000 PC-compatible computer that they say will retail for $1,199 or $1,000 less than an equivalent IBM machine. This comes as Tandy has seen their profits drop as their existing computer line sales have plummeted.
This right here is the watershed moment for the PC and the beginning of its rise as a game machine, because Tandy, which needed to do something because their other computer lines were failing, were like, what if we took the graphical enhancements of the PC Junior and put them in a real PC with a real keyboard and real full PC compatibility? That's slightly oversimplifying, but that's essentially what they did. And that is going to lead to a whole new games market on the IBM PC.
Definitely. If you ever had to choose Tandy graphics when loading a game, yeah. And yeah, this is it. Plus, they've got the retail outlets, which means that they're cutting out that whole cut that would normally go to a distributor. It's a huge profit gain for them. Then they're passing it straight on to the consumer. This is $1,000 less than IBM's asking for.
Yeah, and this is a revolution right here. I mean, this is especially for our area of video games. This is very significant.
Yeah. So, very first PC compatible that I ever knew, a friend of mine, the first PC compatible in my circle of friends was a Tandy 1000, probably around 1989, 88, 89, somewhere in that area. Yeah.
There you go. While Tandy looks to the present, however, other companies are looking to the future as Hitachi shoots for 32-bit supremacy.
Japanese electronic giant Hitachi has announced that they plan on creating a 32-bit Motorola 68000 compatible chip by 1987. This would allow Japan to finally play a leading role in the CPU market, where the US is still supreme. Motorola isn't worried given the timeline in question.
Well, Motorola should have been worried, not because of Hitachi, but because they're about to lose their preeminence in later generation chips.
But the QL uses a Motorola chip. Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, Hitachi does attack that 32-bit market. Of course, they famously end up creating the SH2 32-bit processor that is used in the Sega Saturn. But they were all of them surprised that Intel figured out finally how to make really good processors. The 386 and the 486 is just going to leave all of these other 32-bit alternatives in the dust.
Yeah, and Motorola is already talking about their next, the 68020 chip, but yeah, it's not really going to be used in enough machines to make any difference.
And speaking of the future, though, in the present, XTAR introduces a 3D accelerator.
XTAR Electronics Incorporated of Elk Grove, Illinois, there's a lot going on there this month, has introduced the XTAR GMP, or graphics microprocessor, which allows for real-time 3D rendering. The chip will later get used in the Polygon graphics expansion board for PCs later in 1985 for just $3,500.
Yeah, that's a bit much, but we may be hearing more about this whole 3D acceleration thing in, about a decade.
Yeah. I tried to track down some additional information on this. I found an article from the PC Tech Journal from like a year later or 2 years later, talking a little bit about what this board does. And I even tracked down the former CEO of XTAR on LinkedIn, but he has not responded to my request for an interview just yet.
Very sad.
Yeah.
All right.
Who knows? Maybe we'll get more information on it at some point in the future.
Indeed. Turning then to a few software stories to wrap up our computer section. First of all, Thorn EMI fires internal devs.
UK publisher Thorn EMI has dismissed all 20-plus members of its internal development team. Creative sparks. The devs will continue to work for Thorn EMI on a contract basis, but the company says that the in-house development model was simply no longer economical.
Hard to compete with teenage slave labor. I mean, contractors.
Exactly. It's kind of the AI agents of their day.
Yeah, indeed.
With similar results, usually.
Bedroom code or slop. I'm calling it that now.
So accurate. You see, this is what you would have actually felt this if you had played Dai's Baby. Now,
meanwhile, Games Workshop gets into computer games.
UK board game and miniature game maker has launched their first computer game, a fantasy text adventure called Tower of Despair for the ZX Spectrum. And this was just interesting because the year before this, TSR, the makers of D&D, did something similar. We covered that. I also interviewed the programmer of one of the games. So yeah, this is, it just makes sense. They've got properties, they've got game design. Can you take the world of pen and paper or tabletop and translate those skills into computer games, especially with machines this week? The answer is no.
No.
But it's a valiant effort nonetheless. They won't make a lot of games, is really what I'm trying to say.
Indeed. You have a note.
What?
You have a note.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it follows a similar move by TSR the year before. So, yeah, that's what I kind of got.
Indeed. To. And then the big, I'm not kidding, big story in the British software scene for 1984, Firebird buys Elite rights.
Acorn Soft's hit Elite has been licensed for Z80-based conversions to British Telecom's Firebird. According to Jackie Leon of Marjac Scripts, agents for the game's authors Ian Bell and David Braben said that a Spectrum version is coming and probably a CPC version. Whether an MSX version will come, no one knows.
Yeah, so Elite was massive.
Yeah.
I mean, huge. And it was on a relatively limited platform. And it was Acorn Soft, the software arm of the creators of that platform, that were the publishers, which meant that they were not going to publish it on other platforms. So everyone knew that this game would print money on a Spectrum. And so there was actually a big auction held for these rights. And just about anybody who was anybody wanted to land them. So this was a very huge deal. And of course, British Telecom is, I mean, everyone's kind of a relative newcomer at this time because it's a developing industry, but British Telecom is just getting into the industry in 1984, I believe.
We just covered it a couple months earlier as far as the episodes are concerned.
And so this is a big get for the newcomer, though, of course, a newcomer backed by a telecommunications monopoly. Not exactly bedroom goaters. But this is a big get and will help put Firebird and BT on the map in the computer software space in Britain.
Yeah, and I mean, they're even going to publish it in the U.S. That's the weird thing. I mean, they're going to go international with this thing,
and it sells. We did a look at sellers of games that were certified by the Software Publishers Association as selling 50,000, 100,000, 250,000, 500,000 units, because there's a list of those from 1989. I don't think Elite made 100,000. I think it was at the 50,000 level, but like there were no other British games on that list. I mean, it does pretty well in America too, especially considering that no British software in this period does well in America.
That's true.
It was a hit. Yeah. Big deal.
And deservedly so. I mean, it's as someone who spent way, way, way too many hours in Elite. Oh my God, it's such a good game.
You haven't lived until you've died in Elite, right?
Funny you should mention that. That we're going to come back to that in a little bit. But no. And until you've been hunted down by some pirates, you really have not played a game. So
till you try to dock with a space station. Anywho, our final software story is that Timothy Leary gets into games. Oh, that was a missed opportunity. It should be Timothy Leary tunes in to games.
Oh wow. Okay, that is a much better line than mine. Yes. 60s drug guru Timothy Leary is reinventing himself as Foutique, a future version of Antique, and plans on jumping on the microcomputer bandwagon with software designed to open one's mind chemistry.
Yeah. I mean, so in all seriousness, I mean, Timothy Leary was like this. He wasn't the only one. There were a small number of people that were like, computers are going to expand the mind in ways that we can't begin to imagine. And that's what interested them about LSD and whatnot as well, as the mind expansion capabilities. So it's kind of a weird pivot, but it's also one that is sort of within the same philosophical continuum if you squint a little bit.
No. Yeah, I totally get that. It's just, it's not happening on a C64.
Well, no.
I mean, have you ever looked at, so the game that comes out of his company, Foutique Inc., will be Timothy Leary's Mind Mirror.
Yes, from Electronic Arts.
Have you tried that program?
I have not, but I have heard it's quite a thing. So I'm sorry, but I have to say this. I have to ask. I have to pose the question. Do you think Timothy Leary went with Electronic Arts because the CEO was a guy named Tripp?
Oh my goodness. I don't know if I should applaud or boo. Does that count as a really, really bad pun? I'm not sure. And I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah. Incidentally, I mean, I have interviewed a fair number of people at EA, and I talked very briefly with Bing Gordon about this game. Timothy Leary really was involved, and it really was interesting. Interesting in quotes, working with Timothy Leary. I don't have really a lot of inside scoop, but it was definitely an experience.
I will definitely believe that due to the simple fact that I booted it up once. And all I have to say is I was just like, okay, what's going on here? Never quite understood what the hell you were supposed to do in this thing.
Expand your mind, Carl. You were supposed to expand your mind.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it was basically just a whole bunch of text and gobbledygook. But well, maybe I should go back to it. I mean, maybe I was just too young at the time. Maybe I should go back to it and see if I can.
Maybe you weren't on enough drugs at the time, Carl. You consider that?
Yeah, you're probably correct. And I still wouldn't be on drugs going back to it. So I don't know if it would really make a difference.
Indeed. Turning our attention then to online news, Playnet profiled.
While many online services are pushing their databases and up-to-the-minute information like CompuServe and The Source, New York State-based Playnet is targeting a more social type of interaction built around chat and games and targeting the 3 million Commodore 64 users. Memberships cost $49.95 with an additional $6 monthly charge and $2 per hour use fee.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to them trying to jumpstart online casual gaming, but the economics just don't work in this time period.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. Okay, you pay $50 up front, then you pay $6 a month, then you still have to pay $2 per hour.
Per hour.
Damn.
And all hours, no discounts in the so-called less busy periods.
Yeah, I mean, that is just a very, very expensive proposition for what is going to be a very, very slow experience.
Indeed. Meanwhile, on the darker side of this new online world, BBS gets busted.
Thomas Chimpidas, I think that's how it's pronounced, a BBS operator out of LA, was arrested on May 16th after his home was raided by the police. He was charged with distributing telephone credit card numbers via his BBS. Chimpidas contends that he didn't know anything about those numbers. Paul Bernstein, a Chicago lawyer and BBS operator, said, quote, "The technology is so new. Why do we stop innovation, creativity, and free speech so early in the game?" End quote.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a number of purchases to make with my credit card.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of the articles on this case at the time could have been taken straight out of any article about this at the end of the 90s concerning, free speech and spreading of nonsense lies on the internet, or today with, AI slop. It is literally the same story. It's like, well, we're doing terrible things, but because it's new technology, we shouldn't stop it. We shouldn't regulate it. That's the new technology part is always makes it okay.
It's the same picture.
It is. Now, just as a follow-up, Chimpidas will get the case against him will be dropped before he goes to trial. And various other articles are highlighting the spread of BBSs and the illegal activities promoted on many of them, including the distribution of telephone numbers of computers and the corresponding passwords.
So you may not know this, but the charges dropped? Is this kind of the there's nothing in the rules that says a dog can't play basketball kind of situation where there weren't actually any applicable laws being broken because it was all too new? Or
well, this is the thing. I as far as I can tell from the follow-up articles, there's not no concrete one, but just going off of my own knowledge as a criminal defense attorney,
yes,
it seems to be that they wouldn't have been able to prove that he knew anything about this. So basically, he's running the BBS. People are uploading it to the BBS, because he has it open for discussion forums and stuff. So given the massive number of messages being uploaded at any given time, it's just like, how do you prove that he knew that this was going on?
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. All righty. Moving on, French paper Le Canard hacks French nuclear program.
French weekly newspaper Le Canard Enchaîné reports that they have managed to hack into French government secrets, including a list of passwords, details of the country's South Pacific nuclear tests, and laser weapon projects via the French telephone system data terminals. They did it via an insider who provided a backdoor, but the existence of this information on the system is still very disturbing to the government. And so here we're dealing with the famous French, what are they called again? They're not dumb terminals, but the French.
Minitel.
Minitel, thank you. Yeah, so basically all this information was stored someplace on the Minitel system. And, you needed to figure out where it was and have an insider get it. But the entire fact that somebody.
But why is it there in the first place?
Exactly. So, this becomes a little mini scandal inside of France about, who is storing what, where, and what does this all mean?
Indeed. And they're not the only hackers in the news as hackers unpack.
Stephen Rhodes, a 20-year-old self-proclaimed hacker who is suspected of being under federal investigation, has told United Press International that he hacked the Defense Department's systems over 100 times and even got access to Pentagon plans. Rhodes claims to have stopped hacking now and had been convicted in juvenile court together with his friend Kevin Mitnick back in 1981 of trying to access the Pacific Telephone Company's Cosmos computer system.
Of course, hackers in the news so much in part because of the movie War Games late last year. We, of course, highlighted its debut in theaters, which is really where the modern conception of the hacker even comes from. It's how we got from the benign and clever hacker of Stephen Levy's 1982 book to the modern conception of the hacker as a ne'er-do-well.
It's funny you mention that because that book is going to come up in a couple of stories.
Wow, it is. And I did not even look ahead.
No, yes. But this was funny because Mitnick gets mentioned in passing in this article as this other guy who also, of course, Kevin Mitnick is going to be a very, very infamous hacker in just a few years.
Indeed. Anyway, while in the business world, there had been a lot of talk about the modem. In the online world, they're saying move over modems. Here comes satellites.
Satellite Broadcast Network Incorporated has announced a new data service for IBM PCs. For just $950, users will get a 12 gigahertz compact satellite dish receiver, demodulator, and allow for downloads at 9.6 kilobits per second. For the time, unbelievable. Various services will be providing the data, but there will be no upload feature, so the data will have to be transmitted linearly over 8 channels running at 9.6K each.
Delightful.
Yeah. So
move over Satellaview.
You just took it out of my yes. It's basically the old television system, but now over satellite. So yes, already here we are seeing why satellite internet never really caught on.
Indeed. And finally, we have a landmark ad debuting in computer magazines this month, telling us you haven't lived until you've died in mud.
Yep, nothing much to say here, except this is the classic ad for Mud as they are trying to finally commercialize the product. And, well, it is an epic ad. It's never really going to become a super profitable business, but hey, they at least gave it a try with a good ad copy.
Indeed. Moving on very briefly to the publishing world, as we just said, it seems Hackers reviewed by the New York Times.
Yes, Stephen Levy's book, Hackers, Heroes of the Computer Revolution, gets reviewed by the New York Times and is lauded for humanizing the computer enthusiasts. The book profiles and makes their passion understandable to an everyday reader. The New York Times also printed a short review in their Sunday edition that wasn't nearly as flattering, criticizing the style of the book as, quote, a monstrously overblown magazine article written in chatty, fragmented prose, end quote.
This is, of course, one of our primary sources for the early personal computing leading to personal computer revolution. Levy is a journalist, so there are some liberties taken. I don't think John Harris is particularly impressed with his portrayal, for instance. But, you know, a lot of the early computer people at MIT and Stanford, Space War, all of that stuff, and then a very in-depth profile on the early online system / Sierra Online, even if it mostly devolves into the overblown quest by Ken Williams to get John Harris laid, which both of them has said, not quite, guys, but some good stuff in there. It's still worth reading today to get some of the vibe of those times.
Oh yeah, my hardcover copy of that is a prized possession.
Indeed. And on the international scene, Micro Hobby launches in Spain.
The first issue of Micro Hobby, a magazine, or I should say Micro Hobby, a magazine dedicated to the ZX Spectrum, has launched in Spain. It will become one of the longest-running mags dedicated to system, publishing its final issue in January of 1992.
Spain was the main ZX Spectrum stan on the continent. The rest of the continent really didn't take to the Spectrum, but boy, did Spain.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the Micro Hobby is also going to be interesting because it's partially because it is sort of owned by one of the large game publishers and also game importers, but also because it's going to spawn another magazine, Micromania, which is going to be my main magazine growing up in Argentina, and that one's going to run until about 2 years ago. So Micro Hobby is the one that gets it started, Micromania, and then there's also a console game spin-off that comes off of that. So it's sort of the beginning of a small publishing empire during the print era.
Indeed. Turning our attention now to legal history, Japan recognizes video game copyrights.
On September 28th, Namco won a landmark case in Japan concerning their copyright to Pac-Man. For the first time, a Japanese court has recognized a video game as an audio-visual work and found that the use of a game that was not a pirated copy of the game but looked and played virtually identically to the original was a violation of copyright under the same law that protects motion pictures.
Indeed.
And so, yeah, this is big because, and we've talked about this over the last few years, this idea of using existing copyright law, which traditionally was about protecting a specific interpretation of an idea set in a fixed medium. So you can't copyright the idea of a vampire, but you can copyright the story of Dracula, with Harker showing up and then traveling back and all this other stuff. And the different offshoots of that, a movie version of it and whatever else. But doing it with video games was complicated at first because it's not fixed. Does Pac-Man go left or go right? That was up to the player. What does the interactive element do? And barring new legislation, which is always difficult in something like this, or takes way too long before a legislature acts, getting a court to interpret protection under existing laws was always the goal. And Japan has now done this a few years later than the United States. And it's also important because if you recall, last year in 1983, we were talking a lot about negotiations between the United States and Japan concerning trade issues. And one of the big sticking points was that the Japanese did not want to extend protection to software because they didn't think they could compete with American software, and they wanted the flexibility of being able to copy stuff. So this is also going to be a major milestone, I think, in changing. It gets rid of that one major block to those trade negotiations.
Indeed. Now, the headline is slightly misleading because copyright law had been recognized prior to this in Japan for video games in 1982 in a case revolving around Space Invaders Part 2. But the difference there is that was related to reproductions of Space Invaders Part 2 that were basically clones of that game. And so it was a more limited finding around reproducing a very specific thing that somebody else created, whereas the Pac-Man game expanded this idea of copyright into what you just talked about in terms of being a cinematographic work. So it's kind of phase 2 of the establishment of copyright law for video games in Japan.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, I didn't mean to say that there hadn't been some kind of cases before this, but using the existing law and saying that it applies basically means you're no longer doing it on a case-by-case basis. Mm-hmm. It means now you have established law, you have established punishments through precedent in the law and so forth, and that just makes prosecution of these cases a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, of course, this just goes to show how slow the Japanese legal system is. You think it's slow in America because Pac-Man's been over a while.
Yeah.
And we're just now ruling, just as the Space Invaders Part 2 case was decided in 1982 for cloning of a game going on in 1979.
Oh, yes.
The Japanese courts on matters of intellectual property are notoriously slow.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not something they've put a big value on historically. I don't know if it's still as bad today.
It may not be, but back in the day, it was known that Japanese intellectual property court cases moved way slower than they did in other countries. And that's why we're just now talking about Pac-Man in 1984. Meanwhile, another legal battle. Commodore sees loophole in Amiga battle.
UK Popular Computing Weekly reports that Commodore in the US will be going ahead with the launch of their new Lorraine-based computer despite Atari's legal action to stop them. According to a Commodore spokesperson, the Atari action only prevents Amiga from licensing their technology to third parties, but since Commodore has now concluded their purchase of the Amiga Corporation, there is no third-party licensing, and their release of an Amiga technology-based machine with Commodore branding is perfectly legal.
Which I think would be correct, because the dispute here is around licensing. Even under the Atari deal, when Amiga Corporation was an independent company, it was always understood that Amiga Corporation could release computers based on Lorraine.
This is true. This is true. This would be the way around it. But I mean, that's very much the letter, not the spirit of the law right there.
As opposed to the rest of their legal case, which is totally around what they consider the spirit and not the letter at all. There's some shenanigans here is all I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. We've talked many, many times about the shenanigans.
Indeed.
And yeah, there's shenanigans here.
Absolutely.
I believe you did a whole episode about this on your podcast.
Oh, we did with special guest appearance by one Carl Kuros in the Twitch chat.
Exactly. Yes.
Indeed. Moving on to other forms of media, game music gets busted.
Rocksoft, a new company created by the Spectrum Group and headed by former music executive Martin Humphrey, has begun to license the rights to popular songs and music for the use in video games. While they hope to license the titles to publishers for use in future games, they see a lucrative business in going after the many games already on the market that have liberally borrowed from the annals of pop music for their scores. The first game up is Mastertronic's Chiller, which uses a rendition of Michael Jackson's Thriller as its theme song. While Humphrey claims that they have reached an out-of-court settlement with Mastertronic, Mastertronic claims that they didn't want to bother with a lengthy legal battle, paid a license fee for the units already sold, and will reissue the game with a new soundtrack. Other games that Rocksoft is going after include Konami's Track and Field, which they claim uses a variation of the Chariots of Fire theme, and Jet Set Willy, which uses a version of If I Was a Rich Man. Rocksoft is also trying to license the Beatles' Yellow Submarine for a game.
It's that last bit that confuses me. Well, did Apple Corp really say you can go try to license this for a game? And did they say we will accept no less than $5 million? Because the Beatles never license anything to nobody unless you pay them through the nose and out the ass.
Well, they did make that terrible animated movie. So, just saying. I don't know what this is. Now CRL, which has already done a game based on the War of the Worlds, has announced that they are negotiating a computer game rights to the Rocky Horror Show, and they, I believe, are also the ones who end up making that Blade Runner game that is officially based on the music as opposed to the movie, even though it recreates the story of the movie.
I know what you're talking about, and
I believe it's
and that is CRL. It is CRL.
Yeah.
I was looking it up, and yes, I remember reading about that in Retro Gamer. How they had, because they did a profile of CRL in Retro Gamer, and they were talking about how we had the rights to Blade Runner, but only to the music.
Exactly, and you know, somehow the game recreates the story of the movie, but it's not based on the movie. It's the Vangelis soundtrack. That's what we're inspired by, and the logo, which is from the movie.
Yes.
Yeah. It's what I'm saying is it's an interesting angle to take from a business standpoint, and the fact that they're going after all these people who have used music and probably just, what are the biggest games? Did they use any music? Let's buy the licenses to that and then sue them.
There is also, you don't mention it in your note, but there is also a Frankie Goes to Hollywood game around this time as well, I believe.
Yes, there was a Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and there was also Give My Regards to Broadway, but that was more of a movie license.
Right.
So, yeah. Oh, no, I mean, why not?
Why not? But that isn't the only legal shenanigans happening in the United Kingdom, as UK PC clones get busted.
UK computer maker Ferranti's advanced 86A and 86B IBM PC clones have caught the eye of Big Blue. After discussions between the companies, Ferranti has agreed to cease production of machines using using an infringing ROM chip, which IBM says copies theirs to 90%. Ferranti's machines sell for £1,000 to £2,100 less than IBM's offerings, and their 8086 chipped machines are 40% faster than IBM's 8088 based ones.
So basically, they didn't clean room it. Is that what they're saying?
That's probably it.
Yeah.
Now, Ferranti wasn't the only UK party involved. Advance, the machine's distributor, and retailer W.H. Smith were also subject to the action. So something went wrong there, and IBM was able to shut these guys down. And this is another one of those conversations. A lot of the reason for all those bankruptcies in the clone market is IBM is trying to play whack-a-mole with a lot of them.
Right. Absolutely. While they also take steps to make their own manufacturing a little bit cheaper and bring their own prices down, as IBM eyes Mexico for factory.
The Mexican government has announced that IBM would be allowed to build a wholly owned factory in the country without having to sell half of the factory to a local company, like other companies like Apple and HP have had to, as long as IBM sources half of the components in Mexico. The factory would make PC Junior, PC XT, and PC AT machines, mainly for South America, where contraband PCs are proliferating.
Mm-hmm.
And now this one was another one of these deep dives that I went really deep on, because I found the entire back and forth. The factory is ultimately not going to happen. This deal with the Mexican government falls apart after many years of going back and forth. But I did find an interesting business journal article trying to analyze this from the point of view of, why did IBM want the factory in Mexico? What did the Mexican government want out of it? And it was sort of this idea of how to try to match up very differing motivations in these negotiations. But yeah, so this whole back and forth, this project ends up not going anywhere. And it really is this question of how do you get into these markets that are trying to protect themselves? And we saw it with the India thing earlier.
Mm-hmm.
They want to build their own infrastructure. They don't just want to be a dumping ground for imports. But at the same time, we're dealing with machines that are so complicated, you can't just start manufacturing CPU chips in these countries without any prior infrastructure. And yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that does it for the legal world. Now we'll move on to our hodgepodge of final topics. First, Computer Museum finds, quote-unquote, permanent home.
A 100-year-old building in Boston's waterfront will be the new permanent home of the Computer Museum. This museum, which had previously existed in a smaller version at the Digital Equipment Corporation's headquarters, is largely made up of the collection of Gwen and Gordon Bell and includes items such as the control terminal of the UNIVAC, the Air Force's SAGE tracking system, and the Whirlwind, the first computer to play a video game.
Bouncing ball.
Yes.
But you did not put permanent in quotes. I put permanent in quotes because
I know.
Eventually it shall. I know what is meant. It's not an incorrect headline. I realize they mean they were in a temporary space and now they've moved into their real space. But I decided to be cheeky and put it in quotes because some years later they will move across the entire country and become the Computer History Museum in Silicon Valley.
Exactly. This whole project has an interesting history, but at this point in time, it's like, hey, we finally have a permanent home for this display, which in itself is kind of cool.
Absolutely. Then Acorn Video profiled.
Popular Computing Weekly has an interesting profile on Acorn Video, a new subsidiary of the UK computer maker that is dedicated to producing interactive video. Their system will combine custom laser discs with interactive elements generated by a BBC Micro. They are already negotiating with over 20 companies to produce works primarily in the area of training and presentation. The basic system will cost about £3,000, while the authorship tool will cost £4,000.
You mean we could have had Night Trap on the BBC Micro?
Yes, indeed. That apparently would have been an option. Oh my God. Yeah. So, as far as I can tell, not a lot comes out of this, but it is interesting to see how Acorn is trying to diversify their product categories at this point.
Absolutely. And speaking of some diversified product, Data Copy announces Model 700 scanner.
Data Copy Corporation, a leading manufacturer of imaging technology, has announced their Model 700 flatbed scanner, which not only will be the first such scanner for the IBM PC, but will also scan black and white at 200 DPI and will also have an OCR add-on card.
Fancy. I'm not sure how accurate the OCR would be at 200 DPI, but sure.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't find any good details on that, but the fact that we're now dealing with flatbed scanners on an IBM PC, this is kind of, it's an important step towards the development of artwork and stuff on the PC, which essentially, I mean, it's going to be a major tool for game development and so forth for quite a few years.
It's a major step on the way to the founding of Gaming Alexandria.
That is very true. I mean, without scanning, where would this show be if I didn't have scans of stuff?
Indeed. Of course, we spend most of our time here talking about personal computers, microcomputers, but those are not the only kids on the block at this time, and the IBM mainframe strategies revealed.
IBM consultant Fred Lamont gave a presentation explaining that the massive drop in prices for computer hardware, exemplified over the drop to 1/600th of a price of a megabyte of RAM over the last 20 years, has led IBM sales reps to pushing ever more powerful software requiring more powerful hardware to their mainframe users. The rise of the PC and mini computers may disrupt this cycle, though. So basically saying that they've been making software that's more and more system intensive just to justify that buying bigger and bigger hardware. I'm sure that doesn't happen nowadays anymore, does it?
No, definitely not.
What did I say at the top of the show about how I can open up a word processor on my daughter's 10-year-old tablet faster than on my PC? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So sad.
Indeed. Meanwhile, a Hong Kong transfer disrupts toy supplies.
Playthings magazine reports that many toy dealers are feeling the effect of toy supply chain disruptions arising from the uncertainty about whether or not the UK will hand over their colonial possessions of Hong Kong to the Chinese or not. And
Indeed.
Just to put this in historical context, there was supposed to be a handover in, I believe, 84 or 85. Then this is when Thatcher famously, told the then premier of China, you can decide how the world sees you based on how you handle this. And the deal for the 1997 handover gets signed in December of 84. So, this is when the peaceful transfer of Hong Kong finally happens. But there is this moment where everybody's like, well, what's going to happen? And it really messes up the entire toy industry going into Christmas.
Yeah. So just to clarify, like the handover was always supposed to be in 1997 because they had signed a 99-year lease in 1898. But what happened is that Thatcher was making noises and no agreement on how the handover would work had been hammered out yet. And so it was starting to become questionable whether the British would actually hand over at the expiration of the lease or not. And then it proceeded, as you said, with Thatcher. And then they came to a deal that the handover would occur. But the handover was never supposed to happen in 84. It was always going to be 97 because that's when the lease ran out.
Yeah, but like I said, she was making a lot of overtures about how, maybe they won't hand it over, which would have led or could have led to a military takeover well before 1997.
Right.
And that's really what was throwing everybody off.
And the British would have been totally in the wrong, because even setting aside like the legitimacy of colonialism, like even setting that all aside, their lease ends in 1997. Like by international law, they kind of have to give it back then or negotiate a new lease.
International law? Who ever heard of such a thing?
Not Margaret Thatcher. Anywho, our final miscellaneous story, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy goes forth. F-O-U-R-T-H.
Yeah, that's right. Douglas Adams' trilogy will get a fourth part. So long, and thanks for all the fish this month. While he is working with Ghostbusters' Ivan Reitman, who optioned the rights for a movie adaptation.
Which certainly couldn't have been any worse than the movie adaptation we finally got.
Oh my God, don't
makes
remind me.
Sad.
I still remember walking out of the theater. I was living in Switzerland at the time. I walked out of the theater just going, what did I just watch? Because I did not crack a smile a single time in that entire movie.
I did like the way they did the guide. I did like the cute little animations they did for the guide.
Yeah, but they weren't attached to any funny lines or any jokes. There was no timing. There was no
timing, and they cut every joke short before the punchline. I remember that. They would take lines from the book.
Yeah.
And then they would, I understand you have to truncate literature, but then they would cut the punchline essentially. And then of course they decided that Zaphod should be a George W. Bush stand-in. And that was just not the right move.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it was just bad. It was just
that movie made me sad. And half the cast was so perfect. The other half of the cast was terrible, but half the cast was so perfect. Anyway, that's a tangent.
Did we really need the second head to be in the nose?
No, I don't think so.
That was terrible.
I don't think so. Did we really need Mos Def trying to act?
No,
we did not. No, we did not. So anyway, yes, Douglas Adams, fourth book. One of my least favorite in the trilogy, but that's okay. He was going through some stuff when he wrote So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, and it shows. Anyway, that is it for our regular headlines, but of course we are still hip deep in the crash, which means we have to pour a few out in our RIP segment. First of all, Carl, VisiCorp, RIP.
VisiCorp, the company that revolutionized the role of microcomputers in the world of business with their spreadsheet VisiCalc and the original publishers of Zork, have been bought out by Paladin Software Corporation, headed by former VisiCorp manager Roy Folk. The newly merged company will continue doing business as Paladin Software.
Once there was a complete break between them and the people making VisiCalc, there was never a chance for this company to right itself. And then Lotus came along, and the rest is history.
Yeah, their last big hope was Vision, but they never quite got it working right.
No.
It was too early for a GUI on the PC. So, a survey by the National Association of Accountants shows that 90% of companies that have purchased microcomputers for their businesses are using spreadsheet programs, with 47% using Lotus 123, 22% VisiCalc, and 12% SuperCalc. Well, that Lotus number is just growing by the day at this point.
Yes.
And Byte also reports that VisiCorp settled a suit with Software Arts over the rights to VisiCalc, with VisiCorp agreeing to rename their Vision spreadsheet from Vision Calc to Vision Plan.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, like you said, the split with the VisiCalc people is final, and that's, yeah, they can't even call stuff calc anymore. It was over. It's done. Paladin is going to try to move forward for a little while, but it's also not going to be a major player.
Indeed. Next, while we may still be in the glory days of the PC clone market, we are definitely in the end times for the Apple II clone market. And so Franklin, RIP.
Apple II clone maker Franklin has announced a 6 to 12 month bankruptcy liquidation plan that would see its remaining inventory and remaining inventory parts sold off over the next half a year to pay off its creditors. The long legal battle with Apple has finally taken its toll.
Yes, Apple's been after them for a long time. We've talked about it in the show. And, it's just, with all of that hassle, there just isn't a market for it now because the world has moved on. There aren't enough people that still care about the Apple II to create a thriving clone market for that computer.
Exactly. And, well, don't worry. Apple will feel that pinch too. So.
And finally, an actual game company. We must bid farewell to Rat Slime. R.I.P.
On September 24th, Columbia Pictures announced the closure of Millstar, the company once known as Gottlieb. The company, originally founded in 1927 as D. Gottlieb & Co. by David Gottlieb, and was family-owned until its sale to Columbia in 1976, which itself was purchased by Coca-Cola in 1982. All hard and soft assets of the company will be sold.
Yes, just a complete victim of the crash. They were too late to get into solid-state pinball and lost all of their market share in that space to Bally & Williams. Then they were too late to get into video games, having a brief moment of success with Qbert before their foray into Laserdisc games proved absolutely ruinous. Their corporate overlords were not impressed. And as I'm sure we will cover in future jumps, the pinball name will live on as employee of Millstar, Gilbert Pollock, will buy those assets and incorporate his own company, Premiere. But that is it for the old D. Gottlieb and Company. And I have interviewed a couple of people that were at Gottlieb, and they were the ones that pointed out to me that Millstar spelled backwards is indeed Rat Slime. Great job on a name there. Columbia Pictures and the Coca-Cola Company.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's memorable.
Indeed.
So, okay, we had 3 RIPs. We hadn't had one in a little while, so there we go, making up for lost time. That concludes our time jump for this episode, which means that there is only one task remaining. Alex, what is the word of the episode?
Well, Carl, the word of the episode, or as I usually do it, phrase of the episode, is pretty clear from some of the bigger stories that we had, and that is one person, one computer. It is an age of standardization, people trying to standardize around modems, internets, Ethernet, the networks, whatever you want to call them, around printers, around putting a computer on every desk, around making sure that they are the one that has the standard that wins out for businesses, whether it's IBM and Apple battling toe-to-toe, or also rans like the MSX and the Sinclair QL pretending that they still have a role to play as well. It is definitely the era of striving towards one person, one computer.
I could not have put it better myself. Okay, remind everybody where they can find your fine work, sir.
As always, that is They Create Worlds, theycreateworlds.com being the website. The podcast is still somehow coming out twice a month, every month, as it literally has been since September 2015, without interruption. That's just insane when I say it out loud. As we talked about, we recently did the Elder Scrolls games. Our CinemaWare episode just dropped. After that, we are looking at some Atari 2600 launch titles. Always something new to cover in our deep dives over there.
Excellent. And remember, everybody, if you want to support the show, join our Patreon or not. But yes, definitely follow us. We're over on YouTube now. That's always a good place to go. And let everybody know that you're enjoying the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine. Have fun.
Sovereign Wealth Fund.
Electronic Sovereign Wealth Fund?
You know, the company formerly known as Electronic Arts.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Yes.
Which is now the Electronic Sovereign Wealth Fund.
True. Now, honestly, other than the two sports titles, what do they have that still makes money? Okay, The Sims. They still sell Sims stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's it. Huh. What they need to do to revise it is we need another Skate or Die game. What's wrong with them, really? That's the IP that they need to bring back.
That's the one.
Of all of them. Okay.